Chapter 1117. In June and July, the Central Plains were unbearably hot. In Guangling City, north of the Yunnan River, a young girl dressed in yellow was strolling leisurely on the streets. Although the war had just ended not long ago, all the areas north of the Yunnan River were under the control of the Princeton Mansion. The Dechu state, which originally had vast land, was now truly content with a small corner. The Princeton Mansion was very efficient. In just a short 2 to 3 months, Guangling, which had not been affected by the war, had already returned to its former prosperity. The young girl dressed in yellow walked leisurely on the streets, occasionally looking here and there. Her beautiful little face was brimming with a bright smile, attracting the attention of passers-by. This young girl was Miss Yungu, who had run away from the Su Mansion in Glass City. After leaving Glass City, Yungu headed south. She traveled around while practicing medicine. She lived a very comfortable life. Although she encountered some small problems, it was not difficult for her to solve them with her martial arts. This allowed this young girl, who was traveling alone for the first time since she was young, to arrive at Guangling without any obstructions. Miss, are you Miss Yungu? Yungu was looking at a candy stall on the side of the street and frowning. Just as she was hesitating whether to buy it, a strange man suddenly rushed over and pulled Yungu to ask. Yungu blinked and said with some confusion, "I am Shun Yungu. Who are you? How do you know my name?" Miss Shun, please save my mother," the man said anxiously. As he spoke, he was about to kneel on the ground. Yungu hurriedly supported him and said, "Don't be anxious. Speak slowly. How do you know I can save your mother?" The man said, "Miss Shun's medical skills are brilliant and her heart is kind. She has saved many lives. This little one heard from others that Miss Shun came to Guangling. That's why I hurriedly chased after you. I beg Miss Shun to be merciful." Seeing his red face, Yungu hurriedly nodded and said, "Don't be anxious. I will definitely save your mother." Where is your mother?" The man's face was red, and he said with some shame, "I was in a hurry to enter the city to find Miss Shun. I left my mother at a farmer's house outside the city." "Then let's go quickly." Seeing that the man was so anxious, Yungu did not dare to delay any longer and directly walked towards the city gate. Similarly, in a tea house in Guangling City, young Master Qingshun, who was dressed in white, was sitting by the window, leisurely looking at the people coming and going on the street below. "Young master." A man dressed in gray walked up the stairs quickly. He walked to Su Qingshun's side and said in a low voice, "Miss Shun has left the city again." Young Master Qingshun frowned slightly and said, "She just entered the city. Why did she leave the city again?" After young Master Qingshun left Glass City, he followed Yunji's path. However, Yunji's temperament was unstable and his whereabouts were erratic. Sometimes, it was normal for him to travel 200 to 300 li a day on a whim. Obviously, young Master Qingshun, who had no strength to truss a chicken, was unable to follow her torment. As a result, they only managed to catch up to Yungu a few days ago. However, Su Qingshun did not go to see Yungu immediately. Instead, she led her men and followed behind her from afar. Yesterday, Su Qingshun guessed that Yungu might come to Guangling. Hence, they arrived at Guangling ahead of time. They did not expect that Yungu would leave the city before they even saw her. Just now, someone on the street came to Miss Shun to seek medical treatment. Miss Shun followed him out. The man in cloth reported in a low voice, "Someone has already followed her." "Seek medical treatment?" Young Master Qingshun frowned. Along the way, whenever Yungu met someone who needed help, she would lend a helping hand. For her medical skills to be praised by Shenyang, it was evident that she was indeed very good. Along the way, there were some commoners, but seeing young Master Qingshun's expression darken, the guard hurriedly said, "Young master, do not worry. Miss Shun's skills are not weak. Furthermore, there are guards secretly following her. Nothing should happen to her." Su Qingshun thought for a while and stood up. "Let's go over and take a look." Yunji's martial arts were indeed not bad, but she basically had no experience in the Jianghu. Otherwise, she would not have been followed all the way without being aware of it. Su Qingshun always felt that the person who stopped her on the street to seek medical treatment was somewhat strange. Even if Yungu had left some reputation in the places she passed, it would not have spread so quickly. And with Yunji's itinerary, it was even more impossible for the other party to follow behind her with a patient. Yes, seeing young Master Qingshun's serious expression, the guard also knew that something was going to happen. He hurriedly responded and followed Su Qingshun downstairs. Outside Guangling City, Yunge followed the man who was seeking medical treatment. The further they went, the more remote they became. Then, she stopped in her tracks with some doubts. Miss Shun, what's wrong? Where's she? The man turned back to look at Yunge and smiled apologetically. Yunge looked at him and frowned. Where is your mother? There's no one around here. The man's expression stiffened. She's right in front. Miss Shun, let's hurry. Yunge hesitated for a moment, but still nodded and continued to follow the man forward. After walking for a while, Yunge finally felt that something was wrong. Where are you taking me? Along the way, Yunge had also encountered some things. Naturally, there were not only good people in this world. Although she did not think too much at the beginning because of the man's anxious and pleading face, if there really was a patient, why would she be in such a remote and difficult-to-find place? The man turned back and chuckled at Yunge. A malicious smile appeared on his originally honest and sincere face, instantly making him look repulsive. Ha! Miss Shun, won't you know if you follow me? Why are you asking so much? I'm not going. Yunge said in a low voice, I want to go back. You don't have anyone who wants me to see a doctor. Although I don't have any illness to see. Miss Shun, don't you think this young master has been ill for a long time? A somewhat oily voice came from behind, and a few men suddenly appeared on the originally empty mountain road. The leader was a skinny youth. That person's face was waxy yellow, and he was as thin as a match. His pair of turbid eyes carried a hint of wickedness. His originally ordinary appearance had a hint of wretchedness, making one feel extremely disgusted with just one look. However, Yunge silently glanced at the few men in front of her. These people were not ordinary people. Even that skinny and sallow man knew some martial arts. Move aside, I want to go back. Yunge frowned and said with some displeasure. She was not someone who did not have any temper. She kindly came to see a doctor, but was deceived. It would be a lie to say that she was not angry. Move aside. Everyone looked at each other and laughed. Miss Shun, this young master has been following you for half a day in order to see you. If I let you go back like this, wouldn't this young master suffer a huge loss? That skinny man stared at Yunge lecherously and smiled. This young master sincerely wants to see Miss Shun's illness. Why don't Miss Shun stay with this young master for a few days? Chapter 11:18. Meeting his cloudy eyes, Yunge felt a wave of disgust. She glanced at him and said, You're not sick. You just need to cultivate your mind properly. This man's face was thin and his eyes were cloudy. It was obvious that he had overindulged in debauchery. After speaking, Yunge no longer paid attention to these people. She turned around and walked back the way she came. When a man saw that Yunge did not give him any face, he could not help but be furious. He waved his hand and said, Hurry up and invite this beauty back to be my guest. Yes. The people around him responded in unison and went forward to surround Yunge. Be careful. Don't hurt this young master's beauty. This person was originally a young master from a famous family near Guangling. However, he did not have any skills and relied on his father's accumulation to indulge in debauchery. He was also lustful and would occasionally kidnap women. However, the heavens were high and the emperor was far away. Now that the world had just settled down, no one cared. When he went out early this morning, he saw Yunge treating the refugees in a small town. This lustful guy actually did not hesitate to follow her for dozens of miles before coming up with a way to trick Yunge. Yunge wasn't a pushover either. She glared at the crowd in displeasure and slapped a man who was closing in on her. Although the people following the man were not experts, they had learned a few kung fu moves. Seeing that Yunge made a move, the others also rushed over to surround Yunge. When the thin man saw that Yunge actually knew martial arts, he could not help but become more excited. You actually know martial arts? Good. Hurry. bring this little beauty back for this young master. This young master wants to take her as a concubine. Yinge was so angry that her face turned red. She raised her hand, and a dark light shot towards the man. That man also knew some martial arts. When he saw the hidden weapon shooting towards him, he quickly dodged to the side. When he turned around and saw the darts nailed to the tree, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. "Trash! Hurry up! You can't even beat a woman!" the man roared. Although these men were tall and strong, they were definitely not Yunji's opponent in terms of martial arts. During the fight, they looked at each other. Two of them looked at Yinge. One of them took out a bag and threw it in Yunji's direction. Yinge was shocked. Tendon softening powder. Yinge was a medical student and naturally knew the power of this muscle-weakening powder. However, she was entangled by a few people. Although she tried her best to avoid it, she still got some of it. At that moment, he couldn't care less about these people. Yinge waved his palm and forced a man to retreat, then flew into the distance. She was very clear in her heart that once the muscle-weakening powder took effect, she would really be at the mercy of others. "What are you waiting for? A bunch of trash." Seeing that the duck that had been in his mouth had flown away, the man immediately became furious and angrily rebuked. "Young master, that girl doesn't seem to be an ordinary person," one of them whispered. Although they didn't have much experience, a person who could still run after being poisoned by the muscle-weakening powder, and her martial arts were so powerful, no matter how they looked at it, she didn't seem like an ordinary person. What if he really offended someone he shouldn't offend? This young master doesn't care about her. The man sneered. "In Guangling, is there anyone more powerful than my Huang family? Wait till she becomes this young master's person." Seeing him like this, these guards naturally didn't dare to object and hurriedly chased in the direction that Yinge escaped. As Yinge used her qinggong to fly in the direction of Guangling City, she clearly felt that she was sweating and her body was somewhat weak, unable to exert any strength. It was very obvious that because of her mad dash, the muscle-weakening powder took effect even more violently. But now, she didn't have any antidote on hand that could cure the muscle-weakening powder. Gradually, even her qinggong couldn't be used anymore. Yinge finally fell to the side of the road in exhaustion. Her entire body was so weak that she couldn't even lift her hands. Damn it. Yinge couldn't help but curse those bastards in her heart. At the same time, she was somewhat anxious. She remembered, on the way here just now, she seemed to have seen some antidote. Yinge tried hard to recall as she forced herself to stand up and walk towards the direction in her memory. But just as she stood up, she fell down again. Very quickly, those few men caught up again. Seeing Yinge fall to the ground, that thin man laughed complacently. "Little beauty, run. Why aren't you running?" Yinge glared fiercely at him. "You bastard, despicable." The man laughed even more complacently. "Bastard? Despicable? This is all your fault. If not for you not being obedient, this young master wouldn't want to be so rude to a beauty. This young master's family is rich. As long as you obediently follow this young master back, only you can enjoy endless glory and wealth. Who cares about your family's wealth?" Yinge said disdainfully. She also had a lot of money. Sisterly said that the money that father left for her was enough for her to live a life of luxury. That man had long lost his patience. Seeing Yinge like this, he couldn't help but sneer. "Don't care? When the time comes, you won't say that. Come, bring this little beauty back for this young master." Two of the men who accompanied Yinge stepped forward to pull her up. Yinge bit the tip of her tongue hard. Taking advantage of the pain, she threw out a hidden weapon with a wave of her hand. Then, taking advantage of the time, when everyone was dodging the hidden weapon, she used the little bit of strength that she had just accumulated to stand up and run forward. "Catch her for me." The man's exasperated voice came from behind. Yinge tried her best to run forward. However, no matter how strong a person's willpower was, sometimes they couldn't withstand the effects of the drug. Because she used too much strength, Yinge clearly felt that her vision was blacking out. When she stopped again, not only would she be weak, she would also completely faint. So, she desperately told herself not to stop. Not to stop. "Damn, girl. Those people caught up with her again. Yingu couldn't help but feel a little desperate. She was just a little girl who hadn't experienced many things. It was already very rare for her to be able to persevere until now. Involuntarily, tears fell from the corner of her eyes. Yingu also fell to the ground again. Woo-woo, you're so stupid and still running around. If I didn't come to find you, what would you do? A soft voice with a touch of helplessness sounded. In Yinji's ears, it was no different from the sound of nature. Yingu was thrown into a slightly cold and fragrant embrace. For a moment, she couldn't help but be a little stunned. She raised her head and just happened to look into a pair of gentle and calm eyes. However, that pair of eyes was now filled with a faint coldness and waves. Su Qingchun, is it really you? Who else can it be if not me? Su Qingchun sighed helplessly. Looking at her struggling to hold on, he could only sigh with pity. He stroked her hair and said, "It's me. It's okay now. Good girl, sleep." Yingu only felt her heart was at ease. She leaned in his arms and slowly closed her eyes. Chapter 11:19. The few men chasing after Yingu caught up and saw Yingu lying in the arms of a man dressed in white. The man was dressed in white and his long black hair was draped behind him. When they looked up, they saw a pair of calm eyes that were distant and deep. But this moment, that pair of eyes carried a faint coldness. Such a handsome and otherworldly man was rarely seen even in a big southern city like Guangling, let alone in such a remote rural area. Everyone could not help but stare blankly. Who is it? Put down this young master's beauty. The thin man came back to his senses and stepped forward to shout. He had been eyeing this little beauty in front of him for half a day and was finally about to get her. How could he allow someone to snatch her away? Although Guangling had produced beauties since ancient times, a beauty like this little beauty was still hard to come by. Young Master Qingchun looked up and glanced at the crowd indifferently. Who are you? You got guts. The thin man was stunned and quickly sneered. This young master sees that you've got guts. Meddling in other people's business depends on whether you have the ability or not. Listen carefully. This young master is the eldest young master of Guangling's Huang family. In Guangling, no one dares to go against this young master. Originally, seeing Su Qingchun's extraordinary bearing, the man was still a little hesitant. But seeing that he was dressed in white and was an ordinary person who did not even have the strength to truss a chicken, the man's arrogance rose again. In Guangling, although the Huang family could not be said to be able to cover the sky with one hand, their power was great. It was definitely not something a weak scholar from outside could rival. Su Qingchun bent over and picked up Yingu. He said indifferently, Huang family, is it? I'll remember it. Seeing Su Qingchun about to leave with Yingu, that young Master Huang was furious. How dare you? Stop. What are you waiting for? Hearing their master's order, the few men who followed naturally swarmed forward. But Su Qingchun acted as if he did not see them at all. He turned around and walked in the direction of Guangling. Being ignored by a person who did not even have the strength to truss a chicken, the crowd could not help but be angry. One of them threw a punch at Su Qingchun's back. Unexpectedly, a strong wind blew. Before that man could touch Su Qingchun's clothes, he hugged his fist and fell to the ground, wailing in pain. Everyone couldn't help but jump in fright and look around vigilantly. Unknowingly, several men in gray appeared on the hillside on both sides of the road. He glanced at the crowd coldly before landing in front of Su Qingchun. Young master. Su Qingchun looked down at the sleeping Yingu in his arms and said indifferently, bring her back to Guangling. Also, get the Guangling governor to come see me. Understood, the gray-robed man replied in a low voice. With a wave of his hand, a few people behind him neatly took down the crowd and tied them up like dumplings. Young Master Huang stared at Su Qingchun in shock. Someone who could casually ask the governor to meet him was definitely not an ordinary person. You? Who are you? Su Qingchun glanced at him calmly, then turned around and left with Yingu in her arms. The guards behind him looked sympathetically at the emaciated and sickly young Master Huang. Young Master Qingchun had been following Miss Shen everywhere and had lost her several times. He was already in a bad mood. This fellow even sought his own death by falling into young Master Chinchen's hands. He was really too pitiful. In the backyard of an inconspicuous inn in Guangling City, a few people dressed in extraordinary attire were standing in the middle of the courtyard, waiting anxiously. At the door not far away, a few gray-robed guards stood expressionlessly, as if they did not notice the uneasiness of these people. The leader was dressed in the attire of a third-rank official. There was already a lot of white hair on his temples. Mixed with his black hair, it looked like a head of gray hair. He was supposed to be a high-ranking official in Guangling City. But now, he was frowning and looking uneasy as if the sky was about to fall. Beside him was a middle-aged man who was dressed luxuriously and had a stout appearance. Behind the middle-aged man were a few men and women of different ages. But he obviously could not understand the governor's worries. He only looked anxiously at the guards standing not far away and frowned. "Sir, my son." The man looked at the Guangling governor and frowned. After hearing that his son had been captured, he had planned to send a message to the guards to see who was so daring to behave atrociously in Guangling City. But he did not expect to receive a message from the governor before he left, asking him to immediately rush to this inn. He even specially reminded him to be respectful. He immediately understood that the person his son had offended was not an ordinary person. But when he saw the governor's attitude, he did not think much of it. With the Huang family's influence in Guangling, as long as it was not Prince Ding and Princess Ding, who could do anything to them? There was a saying that a strong dragon could not suppress a snake in its old haunts. Didn't this newly appointed governor have to be respectful to them, the old family of Guangling? The Guangling governor frowned and looked at old Master Huang with an unfriendly expression. After offending young Master Qingshen, he did not know if the Huang family had really committed too many sins. Outsiders who did not know the situation might think that young Master Qingshen was gentle and refined and was a soft-hearted and modest gentleman. But as an official from the Prince Ding mansion, how could they not know? 2 years ago, Prince Ding and Princess Consort were away on expeditions all year round. All the affairs of the Prince Ding mansion were handled by young Master Qingshen. There were many old officials and generals under the Prince Ding mansion who were proud and arrogant. If young Master Qingshen only had wisdom and no iron fist, how could he control these people? If Prince Ding and Princess Consort were really here, he might be able to plead for mercy from Princess Consort. Now that he had offended young Master Qingshen, looking at the clueless old Master Huang, the Guangling prefecture chief shook his head in his heart and ignored him. He only silently calculated in his heart whether he had overlooked anything during his days in power in Guangling. Seeing the governor's expression, old Master Huang instinctively felt that something was not right. But he could not think of anyone in Guangling that the Huang family could not afford to offend. Even if it were those generals who controlled a large number of troops, the Huang family's wealth could deal with them. Besides, the person who brought the letter back had said that the one who had captured his son was a weak young master. Everyone outside the door had different thoughts. Inside the room, young Master Qingshen did not care about the anxious mood of the crowd. He sat leisurely by the bed and looked at the quiet and delicate face of the sleeping girl. The sleeping girl was more beautiful and pure than when she was awake. One of her hands even stretched out to tug at the corner of the quilt. She slept very sweetly, like a little doll who had not experienced much of the world. Raising his hand to pinch the girl's red cheeks, young Master Qingshen laughed helplessly and said in a low voice, "Isn't it good to stay by my side? Why must you run around? If I'm not here this time, what will you do? Since you are born stupid, you should be obedient. I will not despise you. Your little face has lost weight. You are really a little fool." The sleeping girl's slightly curled eyelashes fluttered slightly. Young Master Qingshen calmly withdrew his hand and said with a smile, "Still want to pretend to be asleep?" The sleeping girl immediately opened her eyes. Rubbing her red cheeks, she looked at the handsome young master in front of her and laughed dryly. "Su Qingshen, why are you here?" Chapter 11:20. Young Master Qingshen smiled coldly. "If I wasn't here, you would have become someone's concubine." Yun Gu, who knew that she was in the wrong and had a natural fear of a certain someone, lowered her head and shrunk her neck in grievance. Su Qingshun looked at her pitiful appearance, and his heart softened. He sighed softly. Don't run around in the future, okay? You should know how dangerous it was today. Yinga didn't care if she understood Su Qingshun's words and nodded repeatedly. Young Master Qingshun rubbed her hair and said, You've just cured the poison. Rest for a while. I'll go take care of some things. Okay. Yinga nodded and blinked her big eyes at young Master Qingshun. Young Master Qingshun stood up and looked at Yinga. He said in a deep voice, Don't run away again. Otherwise, I'll lock you up and you'll be copying books for the rest of your life. Sob. Yun Ji's little heart trembled. She nodded vigorously and then shook her head desperately. Seeing her like this, the coldness in young Master Qingshun's eyes dissipated a lot. If you're obedient, I won't punish you. In fact, Miss Yinga was a very interesting person, young Master Qingshun thought silently. However, he couldn't bully her too harshly. Otherwise, the little girl would run away again. Okay, I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. Yinga, who didn't dare to have any rebellious thoughts, shrunk under the blanket and covered her head, unwilling to face the reality in front of her. Young Master Qingshun smiled faintly and shook his head. He turned and walked out of the door. At the same time, his eyes, which were originally filled with faint warmth, were covered with a layer of frost again. As soon as he stepped out of the door, the Guangling Prefecture chief greeted him eagerly. Young Master. Su Qingshun raised his hand to stop him from speaking. He glanced at the crowd in the courtyard and turned to walk to the front hall. 2 of the gray-clothed guards at the door were left behind to guard the door. The rest followed silently. The Guangling Prefecture chief hesitated for a moment and glared fiercely at old Master Huang's family before hurriedly following. In the parlor, young Master Qingshun sat at the head of the table and drank tea. The arrogant and despotic young Master Huang was tied up like a big dumpling and thrown in the hall. The people of the Huang family had already arrived. A middle-aged woman dressed in luxurious clothes wailed and rushed over. Zuer, what happened to you? Who bullied you? Young Master Huang was unable to speak for a long time. It was obvious that his mute acupoint had been sealed. He could only try his best to signal the woman with his eyes. Unfortunately, the woman was too anxious and worried to understand what he meant. I am Guangling Prefecture Chief Li Jie. Greetings to young master. The Guangling Prefecture chief tidied his attire and bowed respectfully. On the other side, old Master Huang was flustered and exasperated. Lord Li, what exactly is going on? Who is this young master? Why does he have to treat my son like this? The Guangling governor cursed in his heart for being an idiot. He lowered his eyes and lowered his head, as if he didn't hear old Master Huang's words. Lord Li, young Master Qingshun put down the teacup in his hand and said indifferently, Yes, young master, please give your orders. The Guangling governor hurriedly replied. Su Qingshun said, You've already been in Guangling for more than 3 months. You've handled official matters quite well. But how do you explain these things? A thick stack of papers was thrown into the Guangling Prefecture chief's arms. The Guangling Prefecture chief hurriedly caught it and flipped it open. The more he read, the paler his face became. It recorded all the crimes committed by the rich and powerful in Guangling who had bullied and humiliated the common people. Some of the cases had been reported to the Yamen, but had been suppressed by him. The Guangling Prefecture chief also had his difficulties. Guangling had always been in the hands of the Dechu state. In the following years, it had been in the hands of Xiling. But no matter which side it was in, the local landowning households had remained stable. Guangling had once been the capital of the previous dynasty. The landowning households that had remained had a long history and were deeply rooted. He had been born into an ordinary family and had relied on his own abilities to reach the position of prefecture chief. But after arriving in Guangling, he was restrained by the landowning households. In order to smoothly take over Guangling and restore the people's livelihood, he had no choice but to compromise with the landowning households and turn a blind eye to many of their actions. I know my wrongs. Young master, please punish me. The Guangling Prefecture chief knelt on the ground. He didn't explain himself and only asked for forgiveness in a low voice. Su Qingqian looked at him and said, I also understand why you did these things. There is a reason for everything. I won't punish you, but since you're the prefecture chief, you are the parent official of the people. I hope that you will first think of the people and not weigh the pros and cons. If you have any difficulties, directly report to the higher-ups. Someone will naturally help you. Even if you act first and report later, the prince and the princess will not blame you. But if your weighing of the pros and cons causes the people to suffer, not to mention the prince and the princess, even I will not forgive you. You will no longer be the prefecture chief. Actually, saying that the people suffered was too serious. Under Li Jie's rule, Guangming was rather good in all aspects. But the landowning households that had been entrenched in Guangling for a long time were not people that a mere prefecture chief like Li Jie could deal with. Hearing Su Qingqian's words, the Guangling prefecture chief secretly sighed in relief. He knelt respectfully and said, I understand. I have betrayed the trust of the prince and the princess. I will not dare to do so again. Su Qingqian nodded with satisfaction and said, Very good. Then let's deal with these matters first. Hearing this, the Guangling prefecture chief couldn't help but take a deep breath. It recorded almost all the crimes of the landowning households in Guangling. If it was really dealt with according to the law, it was likely that all the landowning households in Guangling would be offended. But thinking about how the Prince of Glass City had treated the old officials of the previous dynasty, young Master Qingqian's attitude seemed reasonable. Whether it was the prince or the young master, both were very dissatisfied with these people. Today's matter was just an excuse to make a fuss. What? Seeing his hesitation, Su Qingqian calmly raised his eyebrows and asked, No, I will obey. The Guangling prefecture chief stood up and raised his voice. Men! Soon, the yamen runners waiting outside the door came in and respectfully received the order. The Guangling prefecture chief recited a long list of names in one breath. They were all the hedonistic sons of the landowning households in Guangling City with bad reputations. He said in a low voice, Quickly arrest these people and bring them to justice. With such an order, even the yamen runners couldn't help but be stunned. Looking at the extraordinarily handsome young master sitting at the head of the table, they hurriedly accepted the order and left. Lordly, what is the meaning of this? Old Master Huang couldn't react to this sudden change and looked at the Guangling prefecture chief as he questioned. The Guangling prefecture chief laughed coldly and said, The others have not arrived yet. Why don't we deal with the matter at hand first? What do you think, young master? Su Qingqian raised his eyebrows and said, All right, Huang Yaozu, you used the power of the Huang family to kidnap a woman and force her to be a concubine, causing the death of a family of 3. Do you know your crime? What? Chapter 1121. Hearing the Guangling prefecture chief's words, everyone in the Huang family was momentarily stunned. It was not only because the Huang family was so powerful in Guangling that no one dared to control them. Furthermore, the matter that the Guangling governor was talking about should have happened 2 to 3 years ago, and the Huang clan had already suppressed it. It was impossible for the Guangling governor, who had only been in office for 2 to 3 months, to even know about it, let alone investigate. However, what the Guangling governor said in the air was completely accurate, even down to how many people had died. Old Master Huang looked at the white-robed man in shock. He couldn't figure out who he was. Although young Master Qingqian did not reprimand him, the Guangling prefecture chief was already very ashamed. Seeing that old Master Huang was still glancing at Su Qingqian, he was even angrier. It wasn't that he didn't want to deal with these old nobles after taking office, but now that the world had just settled down, the most important thing was to stabilize the people. These landowning households have been entrenched in Guangling for many years. As long as they stirred up a little trouble, he would not be able to suppress them. At that time, it would be his mistake to cause a disturbance in Guangling, which had just settled down. But now that he had young Master Qingqian's support, he naturally didn't have any misgivings. He wanted to deal with this matter boldly and decisively so that he could return Guangling to a peaceful world. Huang Shiliang, I'm asking you a question. What are you looking at? The Guangling governor asked in a deep voice. Old Master Huang's heart skipped a beat. His intuition told him that the situation today was not good. However, even though he knew something was wrong, he couldn't just let it go. This was because young Master Huang, Huang Yaozu, was the only son of the Huang family. Lordly, I'm afraid there's some misunderstanding here. My son has always abided by the rules. How could he do such an evil thing? Someone must be framing my Huang clan. Please investigate this matter thoroughly. Governor Li was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Huang Yaozu, who was trapped on the ground and couldn't move, and said, "Follow the rules?" If he followed the rules, then how did he end up being tied up like this? Old Master Huang stole a glance at the white-robed young master who was calmly drinking tea and said in a low voice, "Who knows? Could it be that they deliberately set a trap to frame my son?" Su Qingshan, what are you doing? Just as Li Taisho was about to get angry, a clear and melodious voice came from the door. Everyone was stunned. They turned their heads and saw a delicate and beautiful girl in yellow standing at the door, looking at them with a strange expression. He saw that the young girl's cheeks were blushing, and there was a faint blush on her cheeks. It was obvious that she had just woken up. Most importantly, Old Master Huang's expression was stiff as he turned around to look at the white-robed young master sitting at the head of the table. His expression was twisted. Young Master Qingshan. Old Master Huang's vision darkened, and he almost fell to the ground. How could he not know what his son was like? Just by looking at this rare beauty in front of him, Old Master Huang could guess what had happened. But who would have thought that his son would offend young Master Chun in Guangling? It was known that young Master Qingshan was a man of his word within the jurisdiction of the Prince Ding mansion. Even Prince Ding himself had to yield to him. Did the heavens really want to exterminate the Huang family? Su Qingshan looked at Yun Gu disapprovingly. She waved at her and said, "Didn't I tell you to rest well? Why did you come out again?" Yun Gu looked at the people in the hall curiously. She stepped in the hall and walked to Su Qingshan. "I can't sleep." Su Qingshan patted the chair beside her and said, "Since you can't sleep, just sit here for a while." Yinga nodded and sat down beside Su Qingshan indifferently. She blinked her eyes and looked at the person who was tied up like a dumpling and asked, "Su Qingshan, what are you doing?" Su Qingshan smiled and said, "Lordly is investigating the case. I'm here to take a look. You sit and take a look too." Yinga glared at the person on the ground and nodded heavily. "Yes, that guy's a bad guy. Lordly must punish him severely." Su Qingshan lovingly rubbed the hair on her head and said with a smile, "Lordly handles things fairly. He will definitely punish him severely." Below, Governor Li's mouth secretly twitched. Must Huang Yaozu be severely punished to be considered fair? Since young Master Qingshan had said so, what else could he say as a subordinate? Lordly, Su Qingshan calmly glanced at Governor Li. Governor Li's heart trembled. He quickly put away the criticism in his heart and said with a serious face, "Huang Shiliang, do you have anything else to say?" Master Huang's legs went soft, and he finally knelt on the ground. Few people in the world had not heard of young Master Qingshan's name. People with power like them naturally knew more than ordinary people. They also understood that the name young Master Qingshan represented not only the peerless talent and incomparable intelligence of the Su family, but also the power that was enough to intimidate thousands of people in the world. Young Master Qingshan, I know my mistake. Please spare my son's life." After knowing the identity of the person sitting there, Master Huang also knew that it was useless to deny. He could only beg bitterly to save his son's life. Seeing Governor Li's inquiring gaze, Su Qingshan calmly said, "Lordly is investigating the case. Why is Lordly looking at me? In that case, he would be punished according to the law." Governor Li understood in his heart. His expression became serious, and he said in a deep voice, since he has admitted his guilt, "Guards, Huang Yaozu bullied the common people, kidnapped a woman, and caused her death. Take him to prison first, and choose a day to behead him." This sentence had already cut off Huang Yaozu's path of survival. In the hall, Not only did Master Huang's family's expression change, Huang Yaozu, who was tied to the ground, also struggled desperately. He desperately looked in Yun Ji's direction with begging eyes. Yinge frowned and turned to look at Su Qingchen. Su Qingchen said indifferently in a low voice, "You were lucky that I saved you. Think about it. If other girls met him, would they be so lucky? Also, he killed a family of 3. Yinge widened her eyes and angrily glared at Huang Yaozu. She lightly snorted and turned her small face away. Bad guy. I don't want to save him. Seeing Yun Ji's performance, young Master Qingchen laughed and shook his head. Governor Li waved his hand and ordered people to quickly take Huang Yaozu away. Master Huang wailed and knelt on the ground. Young Master Qingchen, please spare my life. My son knows his mistake. Please spare his life. This lowly one only has this one son. I beg young master to leave a trace of the Huang family's bloodline. Yinge looked at Master Huang and frowned. She said crisply, "You only have this one son in your family. There is no one left in the family that was killed by him." Master Huang was speechless. Would his son forced a family of 3 to die? How could he have thought of today's retribution? Woo-woo. It's all this lowly one's teaching. It's fine. I beg young Master Qingchen to give me a way out. This lowly one is willing to give away all the family's wealth. I only beg young master to spare my son's life. Su Qingchen's eyes flashed. He said indifferently, "Give away all the family's wealth? Are you serious?" Master Huang was stunned. He finally reacted and quickly said, "This, of course, it's serious. I beg young master to show mercy." Chapter 1122. After a moment of silence, Su Qingchen looked at Governor Li and said, "Send someone to raid the Huang family. Give each of the Huang family's servants 10 taels of silver. As for the rest, don't leave behind a single tael of silver." Governor Li didn't expect that there would be such a stroke. He couldn't react for a moment. Yes, this subject will do it now. Then, how should we deal with Huang Yaozu?" Su Qingchen lowered his eyes and smiled. Since old Master Huang is willing to use all of his family's wealth to save his son's life, sentence him to be sent to the border. He will never return and will not be pardoned. Old Master Huang's face turned pale. What was the difference between this and death? Generally, as long as one's life was still alive, there was always room for negotiation. There would always be a few cases of amnesty in one's life. However, with young Master Qingchen's sentence, everything was over. "No, old master, our Huang family can't be so late." The people behind old Master Huang, who were originally pleading for mercy, were suddenly unwilling. The Huang family had nothing left but Huang Yaozu to be sent to the border for eternity. No one was willing to pay such a price. Instead, it was better for old Master Huang to work hard to see if he could have another child. Even adopted one was better than this. "Old master, please reconsider, not to mention others." Even old Master Huang himself was hesitating. What he wanted was for his son to be able to carry on the family line. How could he be willing to exchange all of his family's wealth for such a result? Looking at old Master Huang's expression, young Master Qingchen's lips curled into a mocking smile. He said to Governor Li, "It seems that old Master Huang is unwilling. Lord Li, let's go by the rules." Old Master Huang couldn't say any more words to plead for mercy. He could only watch as his son was taken away and couldn't help but cry loudly. The hall was so lively, but the outside wasn't calm either. The bullies and their families who were escorted by the bailiffs were waiting outside. Although they didn't know what happened, they couldn't help but look at each other when they heard old Master Huang's cries coming from inside. They felt that something was wrong. Although old Master Huang didn't contribute all of his family's wealth in the end, the Huang family wouldn't be able to grow after a few days. The landlords and rich merchants of Guangling would hate him to death. Which family didn't have a few unfilial children? Which family of these rich families hadn't done a few shameful things? Unfortunately, Huang Yaozu was bumped into by young Master Qingchen. If he had not been caught by young Master Qingchen, perhaps young Master Qingchen would not have cared about these matters in Guangling. Therefore, these unlucky people would all vent their anger on the Huang family. On this day, In this inconspicuous and in Guangling, the hedonistic sons of noble families and noble families who had been tyrannical and dangerous in Guangling were all arrested. What awaited them might be beheading, exile, or imprisonment. When they came out of the inn, all of them looked like they were about to collapse. It attracted the curiosity of the passers-by. Su Qingshun, you're amazing. Only Su Qingshun and Yunge were left in the empty hall. Yunge sat on a chair, propping up her chin as she gazed at young Master Qingshun in snow-white robes. Her eyes were filled with admiration. She had also seen the crimes that Su Qingshun had committed. Su Qingshun had only sat there and said nothing, but those seemingly powerful people were so frightened that they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. However, Yunge would not plead for mercy for them. Those old people with white hair were crying. Although they were very pitiful, she had seen many rich people bullying ordinary people along the way. Those who were bullied were even more pitiful. Every time she met them, she could only teach those people a lesson and then give them some silver. However, Su Qingshun easily put all those bad guys in jail. In the future, they would never come out to harm ordinary people again. Young Master Qingshun had seen many gazes of admiration, but he suddenly found that Miss Yunji's gaze made him feel more comfortable. With a smile, he raised his eyebrows and said, "How am I amazing? You punished many bad people." Yunge said, "Those were interrogated by Lord Li." Su Qingshun smiled. "But those evidence were given to Lord Li by you." Yunge said, "Those were collected by the Shadow Guard." Su Qingshun said with a gentle smile. Miss Yunge tilted her head and said, "But I feel that those people are very afraid of you. But they're not afraid of Lord Li at all." Although it was Lord Li who was speaking, she clearly felt that those people did not dare to move because of Su Qingshun, who was sitting on the throne, and not because of the stern-looking Lord Li. "You have good eyes," Su Qingshun said with a smile. Yunge said happily, "Of course." Su Qingshun raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a faint smile and said, "Since you have good eyes, how can you not see that those people are liars? Come, tell me, how many times have you been deceived along the way?" Yunji's little face immediately turned red. I haven't been deceived that many times." "Oh, what?" Su Qingshun looked at her with a smile, took out a few things from his sleeve, and put them on the table and asked, "What are these?" This is my hairpin, jade pendant, and my purse." "Why are they with you?" Meeting young Master Qingshun's faint smile, Yunge gradually lost her voice. Su Qingshun looked at her helplessly and sighed softly. "What a stupid girl. You don't even know that you have been deceived. 2 days ago, you gave your jade pendant to the person who buried his father. Do you know that this jade pendant of yours is enough for an ordinary person to live for a lifetime? But her father is really dead. I didn't have any silver at that time." Yunge argued in a low voice. She was a doctor after all. How could she not know better than Su Qingshun whether a person was dead or alive? Su Qingshun said, "The person is dead, but do you know if that is her father?" Yunge was speechless. Su Qingshun picked up the hairpin on the table and gently put it back on for her. Then he picked up the jade pendant and hung it for her, saying, "Look at your journey. If I found you a few days later, would you not even have money to eat?" Yunge lowered her head in embarrassment. She counted with her fingers and said softly, "I know medicine. I also know how to pick herbs." So she would not go without food. Young Master Qingshun nodded in agreement. "That's right. You know medicine, but you have to pay for the medical expenses yourself. You know how to pick herbs, but you give them all to others." Then I need help." Yunge was a little depressed. Although she did not know if her father practiced medicine, he left behind a lot of gold, silver, and jewelry. Her foster father also had a lot of property. She was the only one who brought a lot of money when she ran away from home. But she was getting poorer and poorer. Young Master Qingshun smiled and patted her head, saying, "Now you know how stupid you are." Yunge puffed up her cheeks in dissatisfaction and said angrily, "I'm not stupid. Foster father said I'm the smartest." Su Qingshun threw her a disapproving look. Yunge was immediately discouraged. She muttered sadly, "How could this be? I helped them out of kindness. Why did they lie to me?" Su Qingshun said softly, There are many bad people in this world. Do you think that no one dares to bully you like in Glass City? Who told you to run away from home? As soon as he said that, Yingo looked at Su Qingxun vigilantly. She also remembered that Su Qingxun said she was his fiancée the night before she ran away from home. She suddenly felt goosebumps. Why are you here? Su Qingxun smiled indifferently. What do you think? You ran away from home without saying anything. Do you know how anxious your family is? What if you encounter danger? How do you want the Su family to explain to Mr. Shun? I didn't run away from home. I want to practice medicine everywhere and help the world. Yingu tried to open her eyes wide so that she would not look so guilty. Su Qingxun did not say anything. He just looked at her calmly with a smile, but it made Yingu feel more and more guilty. Then, you can't blame me. It's all your fault. I don't want to be your fiancé. Young Master Qingxun's eyes darkened. He lowered his eyes slightly and asked, "Oh, why?" Yingu bit her cherry lips and looked at Su Qingxun with some grievance. Anyway, I just don't want it. She would not tell Su Qingxun that she did not like to study. After a moment of silence, young Master Qingxun smiled and raised his hand to pull her to him. He smiled and said, I know. You don't want to write or memorize, right? Yingu felt a little embarrassed that her thoughts were exposed. She muttered softly, So what if I do? I just don't like to study. I'm just very stupid. Young Master Qingxun laughed. He deeply felt that he had bullied the little girl too much. In fact, Yingu was not stupid at all. How could someone who could make Qin Zheng, his mother, and second-hand praise her for her learning in less than a year be stupid? It was just that the little girl was not very interested in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She spent most of her energy on medicine. Then what if I don't let you copy books or memorize books in the future? Su Qingxun asked softly. Yin Ji's eyes lit up, and she looked at Su Qingxun in surprise. Su Qingxun's gentle and elegant smile made people unable to help but indulge in it. If you don't have to memorize books or write in the future, are you willing to be my fiancé? This. Yingu hesitated. Young Master Qingxun said lightly, Look at you. You were cheated the moment you went out. If you go out with me in the future, no one will dare to cheat you. No matter how many people you save, you won't be out of money. You can save whoever you want. If you can't find medicinal herbs or medical skills, I can also ask the Shadow Guard in the Princeton Mansion to help you find them. Also, today's incident will not happen again. What do you think? Yingu blinked and felt that her mind was a little messy. However, Su Qingxun's words seemed to make sense. Then we can go out together now. Young Master Qingxun shook his head and smiled. Men and women should not be so close. If we go out together without any relationship, others will misunderstand. It's not good for your reputation. Of course, it's not good for mine either. Look at Li Er, Zheng Er, and the rest. They only go out with Prince Ding and second brother. And Sister Qin Zheng only went out with second brother Su other than playing in Glass City. Have you thought about it? If you're not willing, let's go back to Glass City. If you're my fiancé, we can still go out and walk around. It's okay to walk around for a year or so. Young Master Qingxun smiled. Sure, Yingu replied casually as she pondered over it. Young Master Qingxun, is it really a man to abduct a little girl like this? The Shadow Guard outside the door looked at each other. Chapter 11:23. The dizzy Miss Yingu did not know that her momentary daze had caused her to sell everything she was wearing. But even if she figured it out later, she would not have the guts to reject someone again. Young Master Qingxun did not care about the little girl's lack of brains. Seeing Yingu obediently nodding her head, he felt very satisfied. He raised his hand and rubbed the black hair on Yun Ji's head. His usually calm and handsome face was full of doting. Young Master Qingxun was too outstanding and too aloof. As a result, he saw everything too clearly. Even his emotions were weaker than ordinary people's. Even though he had seen Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li's love, Han Mingyue's infatuation with Su Zuidi, and even Feng San, Qin Feng, and his brothers and his family had all obtained happiness. But young Master Qingxun could not understand these feelings. He did not think much of those who were trapped and suffering by love. If he had not met Yingo, even young Master Qingshun would not believe that he would one day do all kinds of boring things like Emo Xiaoyao, who he once thought was extremely stupid. He did not hesitate to trick Yingo into agreeing to be his fiancée. And when Yingo nodded her head and agreed, the joy and satisfaction that emerged in his heart was indescribable. It was like someone had once cursed him. What is love in this world? Everything has its vanquisher. I hope one day you fall into it and never climb out. Yingo, who was comforted by young Master Qingshun, rubbed her head against his palm comfortably and smiled. Yingo found that after meeting Su Qingshun this time, other than being angry at her for running away from home, Su Qingshun had been very gentle to her. Other than occasionally scolding her for being stupid, he did not teach her a lesson or punish her. Before Su Qingshun could say anything, he was interrupted by the guard who came in to report. Reporting to young master, the head of the Liu family in Guangling City sent someone to send an invitation. The Liu family and the landlords of Guangling are holding a banquet to welcome young master. The guard probably understood that he might have disturbed the young master's good fortune, so he hurriedly pushed an outsider to the front as a shield. Su Qingshun frowned. He had just dealt with a large number of talented and powerful profligate sons of reputable families in Guangling City. Logically speaking, this face had to be given. If it was only Su Qingshun himself, he would naturally not accept these invitations. However, young Master Qingshun had not forgotten that he was also the right prime minister of the Prince Ding mansion. He could not let half of the rich merchants in Guangling flee to Jiangnan after he left. After giving it some thought, Su Qingshun nodded and said, "Got it. We'll be there later." We are not alone. Yingo looked at Su Qingshun indifferently. Su Qingshun, do I have to go too? Su Qingshun smiled and said, "Aren't you my fiancé? Why not?" Yingo pouted, not daring to say that she had not thought things through and had been tricked by Su Qingshun. Su Qingshun smiled and pinched Yinji's little face, saying, "Be good, Yingo. Tomorrow, we'll leave Glass City. After that, we'll go wherever you want to go." Hearing this, Yunji's little face lit up and she nodded heavily, saying, "I'll keep my word." Young Master Qingshun smiled and said, "When have I not kept my word?" At night, the Liu family in Guangling City was brightly lit and bustling. More than half of the reputable people in Guangling had gathered here. Although many of the aristocratic families in Guangling City had been dealt with in the past half a day. However, there were not many families like the Huang family who had a lecherous son who acted recklessly and even caused people's lives to be lost. Many who should be punished were punished, and those who should be beaten were beaten. Most importantly, no matter what, this young Master Qingshun could not be offended. Not only was young Master Qingshun known throughout the world as the immortal young master, he was also the right prime minister of the Prince Ding mansion. His position was only below Prince Ding and the princess consort. If Prince Ding ascended the throne and proclaimed himself as the emperor, young Master Qingshun would be the rightful prime minister who founded the country. Needless to say, young Master Qingshun was Princess Ding's cousin and the little heir's uncle. In short, as long as they wanted to continue living in the Prince Ding mansion's territory, young Master Qingshun could not be offended. The Liu family was a famous family in Guangling. Although they might not be very wealthy, they were a scholarly family with a heritage of over 100 years. Usually, they were quite strict with their children. At least this time, other than the two branches of the Liu family being found to have used the Liu family's name to oppress the common people, there was nothing too ugly to look at. It was also because of this that the Liu family had the face to set up a banquet and invite young Master Qingshun. Su Qingshun brought Yingu to the Liu family. Master Liu had already brought his family and the family heads of Guangling to wait at the door. "Welcome, young Master Qingshun." Looking at the grandiose display in front of him, Su Qingshun sighed helplessly and said indifferently, "Master Liu, you have troubled yourself. There is no need for these empty formalities." Master Liu stood up after giving his thanks. When he raised his head, he saw a beautiful young lady dressed in light yellow standing beside Su Qingshun, looking at them curiously. He could not help but be stunned. Su Qingshun lowered his eyes and held Yunji's hand, saying indifferently, "This is my fiancée. Her surname is Shun." "Ah, greetings, greetings, Miss Shun," Master Lu hurriedly said, but at the same time, he was thinking in his heart. He did not seem to have heard of any large family in Glass City with the surname Shun. This young lady's face was full of curiosity and innocence. She did not look like a well-bred young lady from a scholarly family. Yungu was a martial artist, and her senses were naturally sharper than ordinary people. The moment Su Qingshun spoke, he clearly felt that the gazes of the crowd were different. There was even some hostility. Yungu looked in that direction and saw a beautiful woman in a moon-white dress standing not far away, staring at him. Although she was a little unhappy, Yungu still remembered the etiquette taught by eldest Madame Su. She nodded slightly at the lady, but she did not expect the lady to sweep her a glance and lower her head. Yungu snorted unhappily in her heart and ignored her. "Young Master Qingshun, Miss Shun, please come in." Master Lu's reaction was also very fast. He was only stunned for a moment before he regained his senses and respectfully invited the two of them in. The Lu Manor had already prepared a banquet and was waiting for Su Qingshun's arrival. However, Yunji's arrival was obviously a surprise to everyone. What was more surprising was that this young lady was actually young Master Qingshun's fiancée. Master Lu hesitated for a moment, but still went forward and said with a smile, "Young Master Qingshun, this Miss Shun. Why don't my humble wife and my daughter entertain her? What do you think?" Su Qingshun lowered his head and looked at Yungu, who still had her head lowered. He did not know what she was thinking and said with a smile, "No need. Yungu can just sit with me." Master Huang had no choice but to agree and leave to prepare. Su Qingshun pulled Yungu to sit at the best seat in the banquet and immediately attracted the attention of countless people. It was the first time in Yunji's life that she was being watched by so many people. She suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Su Qingshun did not care about her and only reached out to pick up some of her favorite dishes for her. He then turned to the side and chatted with the guests. Chapter 1124. Yungu was bored as she sat beside Su Qingshun, staring at the delicacies in front of her. She didn't understand what they were saying and didn't like to hear it. She didn't have the appetite to eat as she was stared at by many unkind eyes. She could only sit aside and stare blankly. "Why isn't Miss Shin saying anything? Are you bored?" Just as Yungu was feeling bored to death, a gentle female voice sounded in his ears. Yungu looked up and saw the woman in the white dress that she had seen at the entrance walking towards her. Her voice was soft, but Su Qingshun, who was sitting beside Yungu, heard it. He turned around and looked at the girl. Master Lu, who was sitting on Su Qingshun's right, also looked over. He looked lovingly at the girl and smiled. "This is my daughter, Danrua." The girl hurriedly bowed to Su Qingshun and smiled. "Danrua greets young master." Su Qingshun's eyes flashed, and he smiled faintly. "Miss Lu doesn't need to be so courteous." "What's wrong with Yungu? Are you bored?" Su Qingshun only glanced at Lu Danrua before his gaze landed on Yungu again. He asked with concern. At the same time, he felt helpless. Yungu obviously didn't like these social events, but he didn't feel at ease if he didn't bring her along. Yungu looked at Su Qingshun and suddenly felt a little better. She shook her head slightly. Seeing that Su Qingshun only glanced at her indifferently, Miss Lu's eyes dimmed, but she quickly smiled again. She looked at Su Qingshun and said, "Sister Shun must be bored. Why don't Danrua accompany you for a walk in the garden?" Although our Lu Manor's garden can't be compared to Glass City, it still has its own style. Yungu turned to look at Su Qingshun. Su Qingshun smiled. "If you want to go, then go. If not, we'll go back soon." Although she didn't like this kind of banquet, Yungu knew that Su Qingshun must have his own intentions for attending. She shook her head and said, "I'll go play in the garden." Su Qingshun smiled and nodded. He summoned 2 guards to follow Yungu before letting her leave. This action naturally caused Yungu to pout unhappily. Her martial arts were no worse than those guards. Su Qingshun only smiled faintly and insisted on his own opinion. "Young Master Qingshun really cares for Miss Shun." Old Master Lu smiled awkwardly, but in her heart, she cursed. I wonder what's going on with the Princeton mansion and the Su family. In the Princeton mansion, there were not many princes who took concubines, and the Su family basically did not take any concubines. Now, even some of the young and powerful men in the Princeton mansion were learning from Princeton. How were the families who had raised many concubine daughters supposed to live? Su Qingqian smiled faintly and said, Yunj is the future daughter-in-law of the Su family. Naturally, we have to take good care of her. Young Master is right. Come, let me propose a toast to Young Master. In the back garden of the LV family, LV Donruo was walking around with Yungu. Along the way, LV Donruo kept talking, but Yunji's answers were few and far between. In such a situation, LV Donruo's originally smiling face could not help but become a little gloomy. This girl was simply like a taciturn gourd. She did not open her mouth to speak at all. She did not know why young Master Qingqian liked her. LV Donruo did not like Yungu, and Yungu also did not like the girl in front of her. As soon as the two left the banquet, she chattered nonstop. She kept asking Su Qingqian what he liked to eat, what he hated. In short, 3 sentences would not leave Su Qingqian. How did she know what Su Qingqian liked and disliked? If she wanted to ask, why didn't she ask Su Qingqian directly? Why did she have to ask her? She even pretended that she liked to play with her. Did she think that she did not see her secretly rolling her eyes at the door? Yungu, who was in a bad mood, rarely threw a tantrum in front of outsiders. She walked to the side of the flower terrace and sat down with LV Donruo behind her back, unwilling to leave. LV Donruo looked at Yunji's back and frowned. She walked over and spread an embroidered handkerchief on the flower terrace before carefully sitting down. She frowned and looked at Yungu, saying, Little sister Yungu, which family are you from? We haven't heard of any famous family in Glass City with the surname Shan. We already know each other. You don't have to be so petty. Yungu looked at her silently and said, Our family is not famous. Also, I'm older than you. I'm not your little sister. Yungu could tell at a glance that LV Donruo was only 15 years old. She was 17 years old. Naturally, she was much older than her. However, Yungu forgot that LV Donruo was not a doctor. Naturally, she did not have such good eyesight. Not to mention, Yungu looked young. She looked even younger than the gentle and charming LV Donruo. The smile on LV Donruo's face froze. She looked at Yungu and frowned. So, she came from a small family. No wonder she was so rude. LV Donruo rolled her eyes and squeezed out a smile again, saying, Then how did big sister Yungu get to know young Master Qingqian? Yungu was a little unhappy. I happened to see Su Qingqian when I was gathering herbs in the mountains. We got to know each other. The smile on LV Donruo's face deepened. So she was just a herbalist. His expression became even more disgusted and disdainful as he looked at Yungu. Yungu wrinkled her little nose. If LV Donruo did not like her, she did not like her either. She stood up and walked to the other side. LV Donruo, who was left behind, was so angry that her face almost twisted. She was also one of the most noble young ladies in Guangling City. If it were not for young Master Qingqian, she would not have gone to apologize to a little girl who came out of nowhere. Now that she saw Yungu being so rude, she could not care less and scolded angrily. Hey, do you have any manners at all? You really come from a small family. You don't know the rules at all. Not far away, 2 shadow guards had been paying attention to the situation here. Seeing this, they could not help but look at each other and shook their heads. Was Miss Yungu doing this on purpose or on purpose? If Miss Yungu told LV Donruo that her adoptive father was Shen Yang, LV Donruo would not dare to provoke her. You are the rude one. Miss Yungu was angry. She glared at LV Donruo and said angrily, Young ladies from noble families will not be like you and keep asking about Su Qingqian. If you want to know, why don't you ask Su Qingqian yourself? Su Qingqian is my fiancée. You are not allowed to ask. You are the rude one. Do you think I have never seen a young lady from a noble family? After saying that, Miss Yungu snorted disdainfully. Sister Zheng Sister Li and Sister Tianxiang were all young ladies from noble families. They were not as annoying as Miss Lu. Garde, who was not far away, could not help but burst into laughter. Seeing the two ladies looking over, he quickly waved his hand and said, "I have been rude. Miss Shun, please continue. You're not allowed to ask anything." If young Master Qingshan heard it, he would be very happy. Miss Yingu blinked and turned back to look at Miss Lu. "Anyway, you go ask Su Qingshan. You're not allowed to ask me." Miss Lu was speechless. She was used to the hypocrisy and civility of ordinary people. She had never seen such a direct person. For a moment, she did not know how to deal with it. Chapter 11:25. After a long while, Miss Lu came to her senses. She snorted and said, "Anyway, you're not good enough for young Master Qingshan. If you know what's good for you, you'd better go far away. Otherwise, you'll embarrass yourself in the future." Yinga bit her lips and glared at LV Donrua angrily. After a long while, she snorted and a proud smile appeared on her beautiful face. "I don't want to. Su Qingshan is mine. You can't take him away. Young Master Qingshan won't marry a wild girl like you," LV Donrua said coldly. "So what if I want to marry Su Qingshan?" Yinga bared her teeth and said, "I'm prettier than you, better at martial arts than you, and better at medicine than you." "Humph," LV Donrua said disdainfully. "What's the use of that? Without a good family background, you're not good enough for young Master Qingshan, even if you're a fairy. Don't bother young Master Qingshan anymore, or else." "Or else what?" Young Master Qingshan's voice came from behind her. It was as refreshing as a summer breeze, but it made LV Donrua's facial expression stiffen. Looking at young Master Qingshan, who was walking in the moonlight, LV Donrua's eyes flashed with embarrassment, but she quickly hid it. She said shyly, "Young Master Qingshan, Donrua." Su Qingshan walked past LV Donrua and went directly to Yungu. He raised her little face and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? Did someone bully you?" Yungu rolled her eyes and ignored him. She would not be bullied. LV Donrua, who was ignored by Su Qingshan, was frozen in place. Her face turned green and white. She obviously did not expect that the gentle and elegant young Master Qingshan would not give her face. Seeing that Yungu was fine, Su Qingshan turned to look at LV Donrua and said lightly, "Miss Lu, it's up to me to decide what kind of person is good enough for the Su family. It has nothing to do with you. The Su family doesn't need you to worry about it. If you're really bored, why don't you worry about yourself?" LV Donrua's eyes reddened. She looked at Su Qingshan pitifully and said, "Young Master Qingshan, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that. Donrua just..." Yingu poked her head out from behind Su Qingshan and grinned at LV Donrua. Her little face was full of pride. Su Qingshan lowered his head and saw her smiling face. He chuckled and said, "Why are you so happy?" Yingu snorted and said, "She asked what you like to eat, and what you hate." "I don't know. You can tell her yourself." "Oh, do you really want me to tell her?" Su Qingshan asked with a chuckle. Yingu was stunned. After a moment of silence, she grabbed his arm and threatened him. "You're not allowed to tell her. Otherwise what's wrong with you?" Su Qingshan smiled. Facing Su Qingshan's smiling eyes, he couldn't bring himself to say the words, "I'll beat you up." Yunga now somewhat understood why she had never dared to use her martial arts against Su Qingshan despite being so powerful. She couldn't bear to hit him at all. What if she broke it? The smile on Su Qingshan's face widened. He raised his hand to stroke her hair lovingly and said with a smile, "Okay, I won't tell her. But I can tell you that you have to remember it seriously." "Yes." Yunga nodded seriously. "Okay, let's go." Holding Yunji's small hand, young Master Qingshan turned around and walked out. He didn't even look at LV Donrua, who was standing at the side. Aren't you going to attend the banquet?" "Didn't I attend it? We're leaving Guangling tomorrow." "Where does Yungu want to go?" I want to go to a lot of fun places," Yungu said with a smile. "Then let's go." The two guards who followed behind them turned back to look at LV Donrua, who was left in the garden. Under the moonlight, her moon-white clothes and pale face looked a little frightening. What happened to her? Was she hit too hard? Stupid. Her acupoints were sealed. Yinga looked at her small hand that was being held by young Master Qingshen and turned back to look at LV Danra, who was standing in the garden in a daze. She lowered her head guiltily. After leaving Guangling, the two of them traveled around and saved people. Just as Su Qingshan said, no one dared to bully her when she was with young Master Qingshen. In less than 2 months, Yinga saved more and more people and became more and more famous. Although she couldn't be compared to Shenyang, who was known as the Miracle Doctor, she still received the title of Little Fairy Doctor. It was because Yun Ji's medical skills were superb at such a young age, and she was as beautiful as a fairy. The relationship between the two of them became more and more harmonious. Young Master Qingshen was also a person who loved the joy of mountains and rivers. Naturally, he was even more indulgent. Far away in the Prince Ding mansion in Glass City, the white-haired Prince Ding was facing all kinds of files and memorials in front of him. His brows were tightly knitted and his murderous aura was threatening. Where is young Master Qingshen? In the study, a man in gray lowered his head and reported, Prince, young Master Qingshen and Miss Shun just returned from the southern border. Judging by their route, they seem to be planning to go to West Hill. Prince Ding gritted his teeth. In other words, they don't plan to come back? This seems to be. Prince Ding's handsome face darkened and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Go, tie him up and bring him back here for I. Instead of meddling in politics, he brings the young lady on a sightseeing tour. Prince Ding was extremely resentful. Now, he couldn't even bring Miss Li on a sightseeing tour. The world had just settled down and there were many things waiting to be done. He didn't even have time to spend with Miss Li. This, Prince, isn't this not very good? Young Master Qingshen was the princess cousin. If he got angry, wouldn't the prince be the unlucky one? If the prince got angry, they would still be the unlucky ones. Go. I will discuss with the Su family. It's time for Su Qingshen and Yun Ji's wedding. What kind of scandal is it to always bring an unmarried girl out? Prince Ding's eyes flashed, and he came up with a brilliant idea. It was time for Su Qingshen to get married. After the marriage, it was almost time for him to take over the Su family. After the marriage, they would have to give birth to children. After giving birth, they would have to educate the children. He just needed to ensure that Su Qingshen wouldn't run around in the next 3 to 5 years. As for the future, Prince Ding snorted. What does it have to do with I? This subordinate obeys. Chapter 1126. Yin Gu, who had just returned to the Central Plains from Nanjiang, was in a good mood. She had never been so happy to travel around since she was a child. During this trip to Nanjiang, she had not only seen many unique herbs in Nanjiang, but Su Qingshen had also taken her to visit several famous doctors in Nanjiang. The medical skills and philosophies, which were very different from those in the Central Plains, made Yungu more enlightened on the road of medicine. After the two of them entered Shattered Snow Pass and returned to the Central Plains, they walked slowly westward towards West Hill. Although there was a big grudge between West Hill and the Prince Ding mansion, both sides had stopped fighting and recuperated. West Hill people did not dare to attack young Master Qingshen easily. However, no one expected that something would happen before they reached In City, the current capital of West Hill. On this day, Yingu and Su Qingshen stayed in an inn in a small town near In City. Their destination was indeed the current capital of West Hill. As the right chief minister of the Prince Ding mansion, Su Qingshen came to the capital of West Hill so casually without saying hello, which was somewhat provocative. However, In City was now the most prosperous and lively place in West Hill. It would be a pity if they did not go to West Hill after coming here. More importantly, the two of them planned to take the road from West Hill to the western region, so they had to pass through In City. Because of the tiredness from the previous day's journey, Yingu did not see Su Qingshen, who usually woke up earlier than her, when she got up the next morning. Although it was a little strange, she did not think much about it. Su Qingshen did not know martial arts, so he was different from her. Maybe he was tired these days and fell asleep, which was rare. Yingu went down the stairs of the inn and went to the lobby downstairs to order some simple breakfast. Then he slowly ate it. However, after Yingu finished her breakfast and waited for a while, she found that something was wrong. Not only did Su Qingshan not appear, even the bodyguards who had been following them to protect them did not appear. They could not have all fallen asleep, right? Thinking of this, Yin Ji's heart suddenly jumped. She did not care about anything else and directly rushed upstairs. She pushed open Su Qingshan's room, only to see that it was clean and tidy, as if no one had lived there at all. She went to check the rooms of the bodyguards, only to find that they had fainted and were unconscious in the room. Su Qingshan. Yingu immediately became anxious. She quickly detoxified the poison for the guards and asked anxiously, "What happened? Where is Su Qingshan?" The guards were at a loss at first, but when they heard Yin Ji's words, they were shocked. He rushed into Su Qingshan's room and found that she was gone. How could this be? This young Master Qingshan was taken away by someone. A guard looked at the half-opened window and said in a low voice, "Quick, inform all the shadow guards to look for young Master Qingshan." "Okay." A shadow guard responded and quickly rushed out. Yingu only felt panic in her heart. Now that she was with Su Qingshan, she didn't have to worry about anything. Now that Su Qingshan had suddenly disappeared, she immediately felt at a loss. Su Qingshan. Woo-woo. How could this be? Who would kidnap him? He doesn't have any enemies. Seeing the little girl sobbing, the shadow guard was suddenly at a loss and panicked. He quickly said, "Miss Shun, don't worry. Young Master Qingshan is a good person. He'll be fine. By the way, the Pavilion Master of the West Hill Yinwang Chamber is a good friend of young Master Qingshan. Maybe we can ask him for information. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. Although we have some people in the West Hill, they're definitely not as good as the Yinwang Chamber." After hearing the shadow guard's words, Yingu quickly wiped her tears and got up to walk out of the door. "Let's go." Su Qingshan doesn't know martial arts. What if he gets bullied? The shadow guard behind her sighed helplessly. A rare look of guilt flashed across his determined face. Outside the Yinwang Chamber's sickly scholar looked at the girl in yellow in front of him with a sinister expression. He frowned and said, "Big brother is in seclusion. He won't see anyone." Yingu bit the corner of her lips, but still stubbornly stood in front of sickly scholar and refused to back down. Isn't Pavilion Master Ling and Su Qingshan good friends? Su Qingshan is missing. I want to ask Pavilion Master Ling if there is any news. She also knew that it was rude to come to the Pavilion Master's door rashly, but for the sake of news about Su Qingshan, there was nothing she could do. Su Qingshan had been missing for almost 2 days. Whether it was the shadow guard of the Prince Ding Mansion or the Jinan Palace of the West Hill, there was no news. This made Yingu more and more afraid. Sickly Scholar sneered and said indifferently, "The Yinwang Chamber has long been disbanded. Even if Big Brother comes out to see you, he won't tell you any news. What's more, isn't Su Qingshan a member of the Prince Ding Mansion? The Prince Ding Mansion has spies all over the world. Do you still need the Yinwang Chamber to take action?" When the Yinwang Chamber agreed to help Lei Jinting kill Yi Li, it sacrificed more than half of the masters of the Yinwang Chamber. After returning, Ling Taihan ordered the Yinwang Chamber to be disbanded. Although Ling Taihan said that he was tired of the Jianghu life and wanted to concentrate on martial arts, Sickly Scholar, as a sworn brother, how could he not know that Ling Taihan did this to prevent the Prince Ding Mansion from having ambitions and to protect the remaining people of the Yinwang Chamber? For a master like Ling Taihan, unless Imo Xiuyao personally led a team to encircle and suppress him, no one in the world could hurt him. However, the other people of the Yinwang Chamber were different. Some of the second-rate and third-rate masters were simply food for the Prince Ding Mansion's cavalry. Although it was the Yinwang Chamber that made the first move, the Yinwang Chamber, which used to be famous all over the world, was now gone. It was impossible to say that there was no resentment in his heart. What's more, Sickly Scholar was not a magnanimous person. He was more than happy that Su Qingshan was missing. "Go away. I want to see Pavilion Master Ling. I don't want to talk to you." After being stopped here for so long, even if Yingu was ignorant of worldly affairs, she could tell that this person was deliberately making things difficult for her. She was already upset because of Su Qingshan's safety. At this time, Her temper was even worse. She glared at Sickly Scholar and said angrily. Sickly Scholar's expression changed. He sneered and said, "You want to see Big Brother? Okay, I'll let you in if you beat me." Yingo was not long-winded. She pulled out a short sword and stabbed at Sickly Scholar. Sickly Scholar's weapon of choice was a short saber, and as soon as they clashed, the two of them immediately became entangled in a fight. Sickly Scholar was proficient in the art of poison. It was impossible to guard against him. Ordinary people in Jianghu were not willing to fight with him. However, Yingo was different. She was proficient in medicine. Since ancient times, there was a saying that medicine and poison were inseparable. After returning from the southern border this time, his understanding of poison arts had risen to a whole new level. Therefore, Sickly Scholar's poison did not have any effect on her. The two could only fight with their real abilities. Although Sickly Scholar was 10 years older than Yunge, in terms of martial arts, he was not Yunji's opponent. Originally, among the 3 leaders of the Yinwang Chamber, his aptitude and martial arts were the worst. In the early years, he was plagued with illness. If it were not for his poison skills, his martial arts would only be second-rate. However, Yinge was a martial arts genius that even Mo Xiaoyao praised. In less than a quarter of an hour, only Yunge was left suppressing Sickly Scholar. Chapter 1127. Third brother, stop. A deep male voice came from inside, and a man in blue clothes walked out. Upon hearing his voice, Sickly Scholar immediately withdrew his attack and dodged to the side. Yinge also stopped her attack at the same time. It was because she could feel a vast and mighty aura that covered the sky and covered the earth the moment the man appeared. It was the same as when she was facing Prince Ding. Yinge knew very well that it was impossible for her to win against this man with her martial arts. You are Pavilion Master Ling? Although she was facing an expert she couldn't win against, Yinge didn't retreat. Ling Taihan looked at the little girl in front of him with interest. With his age, this little girl was a little young to be his daughter. Even Ling Taihan was very tolerant towards such a cute little girl. I am Ling Taihan. Little girl, your martial arts are not bad. What is your name? Yinge bit the corner of her lips and whispered, My name is Shun Yinge. I want to ask Pavilion Master Ling to help me check if there is any news about Su Qingshan. Seeing the unconcealable anxiety in Yun Ji's beautiful eyes, Ling Taihan shook his head. Seeing Yun Ji's charming smile slowly fade, Ling Taihan smiled and said, You don't have to worry. Su Qingshan will be fine. How do you know? Yinge asked. Ling Taihan smiled and said, With Su Qingshan's identity, there are not many people in the world who have the ability to kidnap him. Among them, there are almost no people who have a grudge against him. If you are really worried about him, you can go back to Glass City to take a look. Glass City? Yinge bit her lips. Glass City was too far from here. If she went back to Glass City to find Sister Lier to save Su Qingshan, what if something happened to Su Qingshan during this time? Seeing the tears in the little girl's eyes, Ling Taihan sighed helplessly and said, Miss Shun, if you believe me, go back to Glass City to take a look. Maybe when you go back, Su Qingshan is already in Glass City. If he was really kidnapped, and even the Yinwang Chamber of Commerce and Jinan Palace couldn't find any information, it would be useless for you to stay here. Why don't we go back first? Yinge nodded and quickly raised her hand to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. She said, I understand. Sorry for bothering you, Pavilion Master Ling. Thank you. With that, Yinge cupped her hands towards Ling Taihan before turning around and leaving. Big brother, are we just going to let this girl go like that? Sickly Scholar said with some displeasure as he watched Yunji's figure gradually disappear. Ling Taihan laughed heartily. Then, he raised his hand and patted his sworn younger brother's shoulder. He said with a smile, She's just a 15 or 16-year-old girl. You still have a nerve to bully her. Moreover, third brother, it's not that big brother is looking down on you. But if it's really one-on-one, you definitely won't be this girl's match. I didn't expect Su Qingshan to find such an innocent girl. Who exactly kidnapped Su Qingshan? Sickly Scholar asked with a frown. Previously, he didn't reject Yungu completely out of spite. It was because the Yanwang Chamber of Commerce really didn't have any news of Su Qingshan. Ling Taian smiled. In this world, who else but Mo Xiaoyao can kidnap Su Qingshan and also have the ability to help him? In a secluded corner not far from Yungu, there was an inconspicuous carriage. The man sitting in the carriage was incomparably handsome. His clothes were as white as snow, and he looked like an immortal. However, at this moment, the expression on his face didn't have the slightest bit of a mortal aura. Instead, it made the person opposite him shudder uncontrollably. Opposite him, the Su family's third son, Su Qingfeng, who had just been married for 2 months, looked at the person opposite him with a helpless expression. "Big brother, don't look at me. I'm just following orders. If you're angry, then go find the person who gave the order." He finally got married and married a beautiful girl. Didn't he want to enjoy the happiness of being a newlywed at home? Why did he have to come all the way to this godforsaken place and be hated by his big brother? Mo Xiaoyao. Young Master Qingshan lowered his eyes. He didn't even need to think to know who came up with this rotten idea. When he woke up and found that he was kidnapped, young Master Qingshan didn't panic. Sure enough, he soon saw his third brother appear in front of him with a timid expression. He smiled apologetically at him with a guilty conscience. Needless to say, there was no one else who could come up with such a shameful idea other than someone in Glass City. At least, Su Qingfeng didn't have the guts to act on his own. Su Qingfeng nodded repeatedly. Being sent out to carry out such a ridiculous task, he also complained in his heart. Helplessly, as the other party's subordinate, he could only choose to obey orders. However, in his heart, he couldn't wait for his big brother to go back and find trouble with someone. TSK. Big brother, it seems that Miss Shun is also very good to you. Through the curtains of the car window, Su Qingfeng saw Miss Yungu, who had just left the Yanwang chamber. Her eyeballs were about to fall out, but she didn't stop walking forward. For the past 2 days, they had been secretly following Yungu. Naturally, they had seen clearly what Yungu had done. Unfortunately, although Yunji's martial arts were strong, her experience in the underworld was close to zero. Naturally, she couldn't discover Su Qingfeng, who had undergone professional training. Looking at the lonely figure of the little girl in the distance, Su Qingshan's eyes flashed with a trace of pity and heartache. He said in a low voice, "Are you done? Let me down." Su Qingfeng shook his head repeatedly and said, "That won't do. The order I received was to bring you back. Also, big brother, don't you want to see how much Miss Shin cares about you?" Su Qingshan was silent. Young Master Qingshan had always been a perfectionist. However, Miss Yungu was really a little slow when it came to feelings. Although Yungu had now completely accepted the fact that she was his fiancée, it was still because of the affection between them. Even he himself didn't know how much of it was because of her feelings for him. But, thinking of that pair of sparkling eyes filled with tears, young Master Qingshan only felt a throbbing pain in his heart. "Let me down." In the end, his heartache for Yungu exceeded his desire to know the answer. Young Master Qingshan gave up this opportunity without hesitation. Su Qingfeng helplessly rolled his eyes. He smiled flatteringly at young Master Qingshan and said, "If that's the case, big brother, I'm sorry." With a raise of his hand, Su Qingfeng knocked young Master Qingshan unconscious in the carriage. With young Master Qingshan's intelligence, it was best to knock him unconscious and bring him back to Glass City directly. Otherwise, even if he couldn't move, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause along the way? Thinking of Prince Ding's earnest instructions before leaving, although Su Qingfeng was very disdainful, he had to admit that it was very reasonable. Yungu rushed to Glass City day and night. However, because she was blocked by 2 groups of people on the way, when she finally returned to Glass City, she was 2 days later than the expected journey. Thinking that Su Qingshan's life and death were still unknown, Yungu couldn't help but hate herself for being useless. If she was as powerful as Sister Li Er, she would definitely be able to find Su Qingshan and not come back dejectedly to ask Sister Li Er for help. However, the scene after entering Glass City made Yungu feel a little lost. The Princeton mansion was peaceful and quiet, as if nothing had happened. She had clearly sent a few shadow guards who were following Su Qingshan back to Glass City to report. She then caught a servant of the Princeton mansion and asked. The servant actually said that the prince and the princess were not in the mansion. They had gone to the Su family because the eldest son of the Su family, young Master Qingshan, was getting married and the wedding was set for today. Chapter 1128. Yin Gu was stunned. She couldn't figure out what was going on. She said in a daze, So, Su Qingshan is fine? The servant looked at her strangely and replied, What can happen to young Master Qingshan? Young Master Qingshan is very capable. Then, when did Su Qingshan come back? Young Master Qingshan came back yesterday. It just so happens that Miss Shun has also come back. She can make it in time for young Master's wedding. After the servant finished speaking with a chuckle, he bowed to Yin Gu and left. Yin Gu sat in a daze at the entrance of the Princeton mansion. The guards at the entrance all knew this girl and didn't bother her. Thinking about how she had been living in the open all these days and how she had been robbed, Yin Gu couldn't help but feel wronged, and her eyes reddened. Even if Su Qingshan didn't want her anymore, he didn't have to come back secretly to get married. He should have at least left her a message. This was too much. Thinking about how Su Qingshan had secretly come back to get married, Yin Gu felt even more upset. Liar. Big liar. He said he would accompany me to practice medicine and have fun. What fiancé and fiancé? Su Qingshan was a big liar. The little girl's aggrieved expression made even the guards at the entrance unable to look straight at her. Finally, they couldn't help but ask, Miss Shun, what happened to you? Who bullied you? Could it be that the little girl was really bullied? Should they quickly report to the princess consort? The princess consort seemed to like this little girl. Yin Gu blinked and nodded silently. What if someone lied to you? Beat him, Guard A said. Beat him up, Guard B said. Kick him, Guard D. Kill him, Guard C said. Yin Ji's pretty little face showed hesitation. She said hesitantly, No, he can't stand it. What if I break him? The guards looked at each other. She was already so upset, and yet she was still worried about breaking him. It seemed like she had a conflict with her lover. Miss Shun, maybe he didn't lie to you on purpose. If you have any doubts, you should ask him clearly. Otherwise, you will regret it for the rest of your life if you miss out on the person you love. Someone I love. Yin Ji's little face turned red. That's right. He lied to you and made you so sad, but you still can't hit him. Isn't he your sweetheart? This. Yin Ji's little face blushed and began to turn pale. Then, what if he doesn't want me anymore and goes to be with someone else? Take it back and make him change his mind. Bodyguard A said. Take him back. If he doesn't change his mind, beat him to death. Garby said. Snatch him back. If he doesn't change his mind, feed him poison and poison him to death. Bodyguard Third said. Snatch. Just as the third bodyguard opened his mouth, Yin Gu had already turned around and said with a smile, Got it. We'll talk after we snatch it back. Yin Gu did not enter through the front door of the Su family. Instead, he leaped over the wall and went straight to Su Qingshan's courtyard. The Su estate was indeed bustling with noise and excitement. There were lanterns and colored banners everywhere, and the outer courtyard was bustling with activity. In comparison, the inner court was much quieter. Just as she reached the door of Su Qingshan's room, she could faintly hear Su Qingshan's voice coming from inside. Lady Yin Gu was instantly enraged and lifted her leg to kick Su Qingshan's door. Aya, Yunch, why are you here? Come with me. Morong Ting's voice suddenly came from behind. Yin Gu was stunned. Before she could react, Morong Ting and Hua Tianxiang each grabbed one of her hands and dragged her away. Ugh! Sister Ting, Sister Tianxiang, what are you doing? I'm looking for Su Qingshan, Yin Gu said angrily. Qinzheng followed beside her and covered her mouth with a smile. What nonsense are you saying? Today is a big day. How can you see the groom now? Come with us. We've been looking for you everywhere. Looking for me? Yin Gu, who did not know what was going on, was dragged out of Su Qingshan's courtyard by Morong Ting and Hua Tianxiang into another courtyard in a daze. Then, Many familiar and unknown people rushed up to help her change her clothes, put on her makeup, and tie her hair. In the end, she was covered by a red veil and went out to perform the wedding ceremony in a daze. From beginning to end, Yoon-gu was in a daze. She did not know what was going on at all. By the time Yoon-gu came back to her senses, she had already performed the ceremony and was sent to the bridal chamber. Under the red veil of mandarin ducks playing in the water, Yoon-gu blinked in confusion and raised her hand to remove the veil on her head, only to hear a creak from the door. The door was pushed open and then closed. A light footstep walked in her direction. For some reason, Yoon-gu suddenly became a little nervous. Her palms, which were originally holding the red wedding dress tightly, were full of sweat. Her eyes lit up and her red veil was gently lifted. Yoon-gu raised her head and saw a man in a bright red robe in front of her. There was a faint smile on his immortal-like handsome face. His entire person was set off by the festive red, making him look even more noble and joyful. Su Ching-chun. Su Ching-chun smiled faintly and lowered his body to plant a light kiss on her lips. He said with a smile, "It's me, Yoon-gu. Are you happy that we got married today?" Happy? Happy? Yoon-gu could not help but want to glare at him fiercely. However, under his gentle gaze, her cheeks seemed to be burning. She could not help but feel a trace of joy and sweetness in her heart. It turned out that Su Ching-chun did not want her anymore. He did not want to secretly marry someone else. "As long as you're happy." Young Master Ching-chun smiled faintly and said, "From now on, Yoon-gu is my wife." "Come, let's drink a cup of nuptial wine first." Young Master Ching-chun handed over a wine cup and looked at Yoon-gu with a smile. Facing his smiling, handsome face, Yoon-gu only felt dizzy in her head. She raised her wine cup in a daze and crossed her arms to drink together. A cup of nuptial wine. From now on, they were bound by wings and branches and grew old together. Under the bright candles, the couple raised their cups and drank together. There was a faint smile and tenderness in their eyes. The sound of firecrackers came from afar. The melodious sound of musical instruments and the hubbub of voices made this place even more tranquil at this moment. The flowers were fragrant and the moon was shady. Chapter 1129. Alluring dance. Yaoji was 10 years old when she became a dancer. Before that, she was the daughter of a fourth-grade official, though she was not a noble. She was neither too young nor too old. She was the daughter of a famous family. However, there were all kinds of conflicts in the imperial court. When her father committed a felony and the whole family was confiscated, she was not willing to mention her former name after she fell into the musical house. Just like when she was 13, Yaoji officially welcomed guests. After a dance in the alluring house, she became the #1 dancer in the Chu capital. It was also on that day that Yaoji met Mu Yang. It was the time when a girl of 13 or 14 years old had her first awakening of love, even in a place like the alluring house. Though she had just started to receive guests, Yaoji had been in the alluring house for more than 2 years. Naturally, she had seen enough of the sisters in the alluring house being heartbroken from men. When she saw Mu Yang for the first time, Yaoji was not moved. At that time, Mu Yang was only 18 years old. He was young and handsome and white. It was the time when he was riding a horse, leaning against a slanted bridge and full of red sleeves. That day after the dance, Yaoji was a little breathless and nervous. Today was the first day of her performance, which was also related to her life in the next few years. If she succeeded, she would become a new dancer in the alluring house, and then be a pure and noble girl who was admired by everyone. If she failed, even if she was as beautiful as a fairy, she could only do the inferior sex business like many unknown sisters. Women were always particularly naive and persistent in this aspect. They knew that it would be the same in the end, but they still wanted to seize the opportunity in the next few years. Maybe it will be different. "Miss, are you all right?" In the cheers, Yaoji hurried down the stage and went to her residence in the backyard. Because she was too smart, she passed by a man and lost her balance. She almost bumped into the wall beside her. Just when Yaoji thought she was going to be disfigured, a hand circled her waist, brought her back, and asked in a low voice. Yaoji was stunned. As soon as she looked up, she saw the man in white in front of her. He was handsome and had an extraordinary temperament. She looked at him with a faint smile in her eyes, but unlike many other guests who always had a trace of annoyance, there was only a faint worry and warmth. "I'm fine. Thank you for your help." Yaoji pushed his hand away and bowed slightly. "My name is Mu Yang. Miss, you dance very well." The man smiled. Yaoji suddenly realized that she had heard of Mu Yang's name before. The heir of Marquis Mu Yang's mansion was also a well-known and ambitious aristocratic family in the capital city. Although the sisters in Qingcheng Lane often mention him, they had only heard of his name because Mu Yang had never set foot in a brothel. Naturally, Yaoji did not expect to see him in such a place. Looking at the handsome man in front of her, Yaoji frowned slightly. Although many people lived up to their reputations, it was disappointing to see such a handsome young man frequenting brothels. Seeming to understand Yaoji's gaze, Mu Yang smiled bitterly and said, "I came here with some friends. This Qingcheng Lane is really not small. May I know where Changyan Pavilion is?" Changyan Pavilion was where the most famous courtesan in Qingcheng Lane, Miss Changyun, lived. Yaoji nodded and pointed him in the direction. The reason why Mu Yang came here had nothing to do with her. The change in her expression at that moment was just a little surprise because the news she heard was different from the reality. "Yo, isn't this our young Master Mu?" A melodious male voice with a hint of playfulness rang out from behind. They turned around and saw a man in red strolling toward them. Young Master Feng San. The young Mu Yang was not bad-tempered. He greeted the man in red very politely. Young Master Feng San was a frequent visitor to brothels. Although Yaoji had never seen him, she had heard of him for a long time. Feng San was the son of a concubine of the richest family in the Chu capital, while Mu Yang was the heir of Marquis Mu Yang's mansion. With Mu Yang's status, it was definitely polite for him to take the initiative to greet Feng San. But Feng San obviously did not appreciate it. He raised his sword-like eyebrows and looked at Mu Yang with a faint smile. "It's really rare. I didn't expect Heir Mu to have such a refined interest. Isn't this Miss Yaoji? Miss Yaoji's dance is so beautiful. I really admire you." Feng San's words were a little flippant, but it was not excessive in such a place. Mu Yang was already considered a handsome and elegant man, but Feng San's appearance was even more handsome than his. The mocking smile on his lips made him look even more unruly. It was not just because of Feng San's appearance, but something else. Although his words were deliberately flirting, Yaoji did not dislike it. Young Master Feng San, who was dressed in red, was indeed a person who was hard to dislike. Mu Yang did not argue with Feng Zhiyao. He just smiled faintly and said, "I have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Miss Yaoji, goodbye." "Heir Mu, take care," Yaoji said faintly. She glanced at Mu Yang's figure leaving Cloud Pavilion, then turned around and threw it to the back of her mind. After that day, Yaoji and Mu Yang did not have much interaction, but gradually became familiar with Feng Zhiyao. It was hard not to be familiar with Feng San in Qingcheng Lane, because young Master Feng San lived in Qingcheng Lane for at least half a month every month. In Qingcheng Lane, there was even a room specially reserved for young Master Feng San, and there were many rooms like this in other places in the capital. After interacting with Feng San for a long time, Yaoji gradually understood that young Master Feng San was not a playboy or a pervert in the eyes of others. Because when they met in private, Feng Zhiao's eyes were always clear and calm, without a trace of fluctuation. Because young Master Feng San often supported her, and because Yaoji's dancing skills were indeed the best in the capital, Yaoji firmly held the title of the #1 courtesan in the capital in just 2 months. She was in the limelight for a while. The next time she met Mu Yang was at the beginning of the 2nd year. At that time, Mu Yang was still the most proud heir of Marquis Mu Yang's residence, and Yaoji was already famous as the #1 dancer in the capital. Even many influential members of the imperial family in the capital had invited her to perform. To see her alone, one needed to spend a lot of money. Meeting Mu Yang again was an accident. Yaoji became the #1 courtesan in the capital, and naturally stole the limelight from the original courtesan of Qingxing Lane, Chang Yin. It was inevitable to be hated by others, so Yaoji had always been very quiet. With their background, they did not have the qualifications to be pure, but Yaoji did not expect that Chang Yin would collude with the girls of Qingxing Lane to ruin her chastity when they went out for a walk. Chastity seemed to be a joke to people like them, but it was also very important. Now she could be the #1 courtesan, and chat with others was worth a lot of money. But once she lost this, she would soon be reduced to the same situation as an ordinary prostitute. Yaoji naturally did not want to be like this, so the moment she felt uncomfortable, she endured the pain and hid. Chapter 1130. Miss, are you all right? A faint voice, with a trace of familiar worry, came from behind the rockery where she was hiding. However, this relationship was no different from arsenic poison to the current her. I'm fine. Without looking at the person behind her, Yaoji stood up and staggered forward. Miss Yaoji. Muyang was a little worried and pulled Yaoji. Seeing her flushed cheeks, he suddenly realized, what's wrong with you? I'll ask someone to call a doctor. Yaoji, who was already swaying unsteadily, fell into Mu Yang's arms when Mu Yang pulled her. Yaoji only felt that her mind was in a mess. She grabbed Mu Yang's hand and gritted her teeth to maintain the last trace of consciousness. It's too late. It's too late. I remember there's a pool in front. Throw me in. But Mu Yang frowned. Although it was spring now, it was still the end of February. The pool was a little cold for men, not to mention women. It's okay. I can swim. Please. Mu Yang was also a son of an aristocratic family and had seen many private tricks. Seeing Yaoji so insistent, he nodded and said, in that case, I'm sorry to offend you. That day, Yaoji fell into the water and was saved by Marquis Mu Yang's son. She was sick for a month, but Yaoji also fell in love with that gentle and cheerful young man. He not only helped her, but also saved her life. In the following years, Yaoji's reputation grew. With the support of young Master Feng San, Marquis Mu Yang's son, and other sons of nobles in the capital, no one dared to make trouble in Qingxing Lane. When Yaoji was 20 years old, she officially became the owner of Qingxing Lane and no longer received guests. She only danced when the nobles in the capital or even the palace needed her to perform. The rest of the time, she sat alone on the second floor of Qingxing Lane and looked at the bustling downstairs indifferently. Miss, Marquis Mu Yang is here. Outside the door, a maid reported in a low voice. Yaoji turned around and said with a faint tiredness on her enchanting face, please go back, Marquis Mu Yang. I won't see any guests. Seeing the maid leave with a little surprise, Yaoji smiled faintly. In the blink of an eye, they had known each other for almost 10 years. Yaoji couldn't remember when they started dating. Her own Feng Jiao had once smiled and sighed, Yaoji, falling in love with someone like Mu Yang, you're really asking for trouble. Whether it's sentiment or reason, you should also choose this young master. At that time, Yaoji just smiled faintly. How could she not know that with Mu Yang's identity, there would be no connection between them at all? On the contrary, Feng Jiao, who was born a concubine of a rich family, would have less pressure. However, she had never felt her heart flutter in front of the handsome, young Master Feng San, because she knew that young Master Feng San already had someone in his heart, and Mu Yang only had eyes for her. However, such days couldn't last long. Although he had already passed his prime, he still refused to get married. However, 2 months ago, he finally couldn't withstand the pressure from the Mu family and got engaged to the young lady of the Sun family. After that, Yaoji was not surprised that Miss Sun, who was his fiancée, came to her. Thinking of what Princess Ding said at the Fenghua building yesterday, Yaoji smiled bitterly and a trace of determination flashed across her beautiful face. Even though she had only seen Ding Wangfei twice, Yaoji had to admit that no matter what, that Wangfei was someone she envied. She had a noble background, a husband who could shelter her from the wind and rain wholeheartedly, an open-minded mind, and an ability and intelligence that were different from ordinary women. She should let go when she wanted to. Perhaps she really should leave. Yaoji lowered her head and stroked her still flat belly with a faint smile. Princess Ding was right. As long as she wanted to live well, she could always live a good life. Moreover, she was not alone now. Yaoji, there was a flurry of footsteps outside the door. Soon, Muyang appeared at the door and looked at her with an unsightly expression. The servants of Qingqing Lane followed Muyang worriedly. Obviously, they didn't dare to stop the heir of Marquis Muyang's residence. Yaoji waved her hand to let the servants leave. Looking at him, she smiled faintly and said, "What do you mean by this?" Although Qingqing Lane is a brothel, Yaoji hasn't received guests for many years. Yaoji, haven't you had enough? What happened at the Fenghua building yesterday made Muyang very unhappy. However, his years of relationship with Yaoji weren't fake, so he immediately came to Qingqing Lane to find her as soon as he calmed down. He didn't expect to be refused at the door. Yaoji sneered and said, "I've had enough. Please don't come to Qingqing Lane in the future. Otherwise, you might run into Mrs. Sun and Miss Sun on the street." "What do you mean?" Muyang frowned. Yaoji waved her hand and shook her head. "Nothing. Please go back." Looking at Yaoji's silent expression, Muyang sighed helplessly and said, "Yaoji, I'm doing this for our future. You know, Marquis Muyang's residence. It's impossible for me to marry you as my legal wife. Can't you suffer a little for my sake?" Yaoji looked at him calmly and said, "I'm not used to suffering, and you don't have to. I hope your highness can take into account our many years of friendship and let us part on good terms." Knowing Yaoji's temper, it was impossible to persuade her in a short time. Muyang could only sigh and said in a low voice, "I'll go back first. Think about it carefully." Looking at his back, Yaoji suddenly said, "Muyang, after so many years we've both changed. Don't come here in the future. You're no longer the gentle and candid young man, and I'm no longer the young girl who only wanted love. We've both grown up and changed." Muyang's body paused for a moment before he left silently. "Miss!" Outside the door, the servant girl looked worriedly at Yaoji, who was a little absent-minded. Yaoji came to herself and smiled faintly. "Pack up. I'm going out." "Where are you going?" "Prince Ding Mansion." Coming out of the Prince Ding Mansion, Yaoji breathed a long sigh of relief. Selling Qingqing Lane to Princess Ding, Yaoji didn't know if it was an impulse, but when she really did it, she didn't feel as reluctant as she imagined. With the money earned from these years and selling Qingqing Lane, it was enough for her to live in luxury for the rest of her life. Finding a quiet place, giving birth to the child, and raising it well, she might find a different happiness in her life. Wasn't this the peaceful life she had always hoped for? "Miss, take care." The man who followed Yaoji out said in a deep voice. The man's deep voice sounded very pleasant, but Yaoji was a little surprised that he would say goodbye to her. She had seen this man twice around Princess Ding. He wasn't an ordinary guard and seemed to have a high status. Shouldn't such a person be very disdainful to people like her? Or was it that the people around Princess Ding were really different? "Thank you." Yaoji choked. She didn't know this man's name. "Thank you, sir." In front of this silent man, Yaoji found that the social skills she had learned in Qingqing Lane all these years seemed to be completely useless. She couldn't even put on a smile on her face, so she could only express her gratitude in an unembarrassed manner. The man looked at her calmly and said, "I'm Qin Feng. Miss, your body isn't well. If you want to go on a long journey, you'd better wait for some time." Yaoji was stunned for a moment. Then she nodded and said, "Thank you for reminding me, Commander Qin. I'll take my leave. I won't see you out." Qin Feng said indifferently. Yaoji smiled faintly, then turned around and left in a natural and unrestrained manner. She naturally understood Qin Feng's reminder and concern. Her gloomy mood these days because of these things had improved a lot. If he could show some concern to a stranger he didn't know, there must be many good people in this world. After leaving Chu Jing, she might not be so sad. At least from now on, she was no longer a dancer, but an ordinary person. This was actually what she had wanted all along, wasn't it? When she sold Qingqing Lane to Princess Ding, Princess Ding used Princess Ding's power to change her household register. Since then, the music register that she had been brooding about was no longer there. Yaoji, was just a single mother with a child. Chapter 1131. In a courtyard on the outskirts of the Chu capital, under the faint sunlight, a beautiful but slightly thin and pale woman sat under a tree with a baby in her arms. The baby in her arms was more than 3 months old. Compared to the wrinkled appearance when he was just born, his little face was now white and tender. A pair of big watery eyes looked at the woman holding him and giggled. The woman lowered her head and looked at the baby in her arms. A faint smile appeared on her originally hesitant face. "Miss Yaoji, Madam and young Madam are here." At the door, a woman who looked like a maid reported in a deep voice. Although she was a maid, she looked at the woman under the tree without the slightest respect. Instead, she was full of contempt and disgust. Yaoji had long been used to such gazes and didn't care. In the eyes of these people, she was just a shameless woman who seduced the heir of Marquis Muyang's mansion. Yaoji lowered her head as if she didn't hear her. Since she was caught in June when she was pregnant, the madam of Marquis Muyang's family took away all her belongings and she lost her freedom. When she was about to give birth, she almost died in an avalanche. Even Yaoji didn't expect that the seemingly gentle and well-educated young madam of Marquis Muyang's mansion would be so vicious. After going through so much, Yaoji became more and more bitterly disappointed. She completely despaired of these so-called rich and powerful people. The maid said she was here to report, but she didn't say she was here to inform. Seeing that Yaoji didn't speak, she didn't care and left directly. Sure enough, a group of people came in after a while. Madam of Marquis Muyang frowned and looked at the charming Yaoji in white, her eyes full of disgust. Born in a noble family, she naturally hated these enchanting women the most, not to mention that this woman had hooked her son's heart. The young madam of Marquis Muyang's mansion, who had just entered the family for a few months, was even more jealous. Yaoji's appearance could be ranked in the top 5 even in the entire capital city. In the past, when she wore a red dance dress in Qingqing Lane, she had attracted praise from all sides at the banquet in the palace. Even though she had lost a lot of weight and was dressed in white without any makeup, she was more elegant and proud like a lotus flower. How could young Madame Mu, the young lady of the Sun family, compare to her? Originally, this young Madame Mu had a scholarly and elegant temperament, which made Yuli secretly praise her in her heart. However, after getting married, her life was filled with jealousy and viciousness. She had long abandoned her last advantage. Now, it seemed that she was just a mean and vicious young woman. "How dare you? Don't you even know how to salute?" The madam of the Marquis Muyang's mansion reprimanded in a deep voice. Yaoji raised her head and said indifferently, "You two didn't come in person but still asked the master to bow." Young Madame Mu shrieked, "What kind of master are you?" "This is Marquis Muyang's residence." Yaoji said, "It's true that I'm not the master, but neither is young Mistress Mu." This was Mu Yang's private courtyard. Obviously, Mu Yang did not recognize the young madam's right to own her own private property. "Young Madame Mu, do you still remember? When you almost starved me and Jing into death, Mu Yang had ordered that you and Jing and were not allowed to take a step into this place. As for me, if Madame Mu is willing to let me go, Yaoji will be very grateful. I think the money you took from me should be enough to pay for these days, right?" Marquis Muyang's and young Madame Mu's faces were both green and white. Young Madame Mu was purely angry, while Marquis Muyang was more embarrassed and angry. Zhang family took away all of Yaoji's property, and a large part of it fell into her hands. Yaoji naturally made a lot of money these years. When she sold Qingqing Lane to Prince Ding Mansion, Yuli did not take advantage of Yaoji. The price she gave was absolutely fair. In addition, Yaoji was given all kinds of treasures by many celebrities, refined scholars, princes, and dignitaries. If it was really valued, it was worth at least 300,000 to 400,000 taels of silver. Such a large sum of money. Even for a noble family like Marquis Muyang's residence, it was absolutely a huge sum of money. After a long while, Marquis Muyang stood up and gritted her teeth. If you want to leave, then leave. But you must keep the child. Although the child's mother came from a dishonorable background, he was the first grandchild of Marquis Muyang's residence. Since Sun did not make any move after Muyang got married for so long, Marquis Muyang naturally valued this child more. Moreover, the bloodline of Marquis Muyang's residence could not be left outside. Don't even think about it. Yaoji stood up with the child in her arms and stared at Marquis Muyang warily. She suddenly sneered. If you don't want to leave, then leave. I'm not afraid of you. Even if I don't have a status here, Muyang will still provide for me with good food and luxurious clothes. If I think it through one day, it's fine for me to enter the residence as a concubine. With my beauty, do you think I'm afraid of an average-looking woman? I just don't know. If Prince Muyang married a dancer, will he be a laughingstock? You're shameless. Young Madame Mu's face suddenly changed. Yaoji was living in another courtyard now, and Muyang often refused to go home. If this mother and son were brought back to the residence, would there be a place for her in Marquis Muyang's residence? Yaoji faintly lifted her lips and smiled beautifully. You flatter me. I'm not as good as someone. The mocking tone was so obvious that Marquis Muyang couldn't pretend not to understand it. How could Marquis Muyang, who had always been high and mighty in front of Yaoji, tolerate the mockery of a dancer? She said angrily, You bitch. I'd like to see if I can control you or not. So what if Muyang dotes on you? I'm Muyang's mother after all. Yaoji sneered. So what if you're Muyang's mother? Is it that rare? If it was before when she had a strong relationship with Muyang, she might have some scruples about Muyang. But now, as early as when she was almost killed by young Madame Mu during childbirth, and when she and the child almost starved to death some time ago, she had already given up on Muyang. It was not because Muyang refused to avenge her and the child. She understood that Muyang cared about Marquis Muyang's residence and son family. What she hated the most was that Muyang still refused to let her go, even though he knew that it was dangerous for her and the child to stay in the Chu capital. She didn't know and didn't want to know whether it was because Muyang was confident that he could protect her and the child, or because in Muyang's eyes, her and the child's lives were not that important. But now, her heart was completely cold towards Muyang. Compared to her son, their love in the past had long become a thing of the past. Guards, drag this woman out and beat her hard. Marquis Muyang shouted. Who dares? The servants around were about to take action when Muyang quickly walked in from outside and shouted sternly. Muyang walked into the courtyard and glanced at young Madame Mu, who was standing beside Marquis Muyang. He said angrily, It's you again. Young Madame Mu lowered her head bitterly. Although it was indeed she who instigated her mother-in-law to come here, her husband's attitude of reprimanding her without even asking hurt her. It wasn't that she didn't want to be a virtuous wife, but when Yaoji went missing, Muyang went to the battlefield without saying a word. After that, Marquis Muyang's residence found Yaoji, and Muyang came back and married her. However, no matter what she did, he was always indifferent to her. She was just a newly married woman in her teens. How could she bear it? Chapter 1132. Yaoji sneered and sneered. Is the crown prince blind? It wasn't young Madame Mu who wanted to hit me. Muyang frowned and looked at Yaoji helplessly. Yaoji, who was talking and laughing, suddenly changed her expression. She raised her hand and slapped Muyang hard in the face. Not only did Muyang's face turn to the side, but also made Marchioness Muyang and young Madame Mu cry out in shock. Yanger, bitch, you. Marchioness Muyang was furious. Muyang hurriedly stopped his mother, who was about to fly into a rage. He said to Yaoji with a gloomy expression, Are you appeased now? Yaoji pursed her lips and smiled, but her smile was extremely cold. Appeased? You must be joking. Since you said you want to marry me, Yaoji has a question even though my life is cheap. Muyang was delighted, thinking that Yaoji had relented. He hurriedly said, Ask away. Yaoji held the child with one hand and pointed at matriarch Mu, asking, "If Yaoji is killed by Marchioness Muyang one day, what are you going to do?" Mu Yang's expression changed slightly. "Yaoji, what nonsense are you talking about? How could my mother?" Yaoji sneered and raised her eyebrows. "Why don't you ask Marchioness Muyang if she was going to kill me just now?" Mu Yang turned to look at Marchioness Muyang, only to see her stiffly turn her face away. His heart couldn't help but sink. Yaoji smiled brilliantly. "It's fine if you want to marry me as a concubine. Based on your sincerity, Yaoji will use my life to stop you. As long as you swear in front of everyone in the capital that if Yaoji dies an unnatural death one day, you will personally kill her in front of her coffin, and she will still be my subordinate. How about it?" Yang heir, Marchioness Muyang and young Madame Mu both tried to stop him. Looking at their ugly expressions, Yaoji smiled mockingly and turned to enter the room with the child, ignoring how noisy Marchioness Muyang and young Madame Mu were outside. When Muyang finally saw his mother and wife off, he returned to his room and saw Yaoji standing in front of the window, thinking about something. A trace of guilt flashed through Mu Yang's eyes as he sighed in a low voice. "Yaoji, why are you doing this? Why would you say something like that? I know, you're not that kind of person." Yaoji sneered. "You're wrong. I'm that kind of person. If I don't live well, then no one will. If anything happens to me, I won't count on you to avenge me." I gave 50,000 taels of silver to the Yanwang Chamber of Commerce. If anything happens to me, the people of the Yanwang Chamber of Commerce will naturally avenge me. I don't believe it. Muyang shook his head and smiled. Yaoji remained silent. Muyang hugged her waist from behind and whispered, "Yaoji, you can live here from now on. Don't worry, from now on, Marquis Muyang's men will never come again. No one will disturb us. Let's live a good life." More than a year ago, when Muyang hugged her like this, she still felt warm and tender. But now, she felt as if a cold and wet snake had wrapped itself around her. From the outside to the inside, the coldness seeped into his heart. Sure enough, no one disturbed them for 2 whole months. In these 2 months, Yaoji didn't resist Muyang, nor did she make a fuss about leaving. Gradually, Muyang seemed to be relieved, and he came less often than before. After all, Muyang was a young and promising man. It was impossible for him to spend all his time on a woman. When Yaoji knew that Muyang wouldn't come for some time because of Mo Jingqi's order, she knew her chance had come. The servants in the courtyard didn't respect Yaoji. Seeing that she didn't intend to run away, they gradually relaxed their vigilance. Finally, Yaoji took the child and escaped from the courtyard one night when the lanterns were lit. After escaping from the courtyard, Yaoji only took some cheap but valuable jewelry, and she immediately exchanged these jewelry for silver notes. She didn't know when Muyang found out that she was missing, but no one chased after her for a few days before she escaped. Yaoji ran day and night all the way to the west, but unfortunately, she was still caught by the people of Marquis Muyang's mansion 10 days later. It wasn't easy for a lone woman to run around with a child. On the 15th day, Yaoji finally saw the people who chased after her. But they were different from the people who looked for her everywhere 2 days ago. These people wanted to kill her. Just when Yaoji was almost desperate, several carriages appeared at the edge of the woods. Without thinking too much, Yaoji ran towards the carriages with the child in her arms. While running, she shouted, "Help! Help!" In the front, a man in gray was stunned for a moment, and then he quickly jumped up. The people who chased after her were not professional assassins, nor were they masters. Naturally, they were easily killed. Yaoji sat on the ground with the child in her arms. For a moment, she didn't come to her senses. Was she safe? "Miss Yaoji, are you all right?" A deep male voice sounded in front of her. Yaoji looked up in a daze. A tall man with a calm expression stood in front of her. Yaoji was stunned, saying, "You are Commander Qin?" "Qin Feng," Qin Feng said lightly. He was ordered to go to the capital of Chu to find the princess's 2 wet nurses and 2 maids. But he didn't expect to meet Yaoji, who was being chased. Frowning, Qin Feng asked, "Who is chasing after you?" Yaoji said with waning interest, Probably people from the house of Marquis Muyang. She had just escaped from danger. These days of hiding and hurrying on the road had already exhausted her both mentally and physically. Now that she suddenly relaxed, she didn't have the mood to care about these things. Qin Feng looked down at the child in her arms. He didn't cry when Yaoji was running with him. "This is your child?" Yaoji nodded and smiled, saying, "Yes, this is my son, Shinjingan." Qin Feng raised his eyebrows. He didn't ask why the child's surname wasn't Mu. He looked down at Yaoji and said, "Miss, what are your plans?" Yaoji said embarrassedly, "I plan to go west." Qin Feng thought for a moment and said, "We're going back to Glass City. Miss, you can come with us." Yaoji was delighted. She originally planned to go to the Prince Ding mansion. She didn't have to go to Glass City. But people from the house of Marquis Muyang would be more restrained after entering Feihong Pass. But the journey to Glass City was long. It would be best if she could travel with them. Thinking of this, Yaoji didn't refuse. She nodded and said, "Then, thank you, Commander Qin." Qin Feng shook his head silently. He looked at Yaoji's sallow and emaciated appearance and didn't say anything more. He only said, "It's nothing. No need to be so polite." Chapter 1133. Yaoji lived in Glass City. After careful consideration, she finally asked Princess Ding to find a good family for the child. When she was in Marquis Muyang's mansion, she would rather die than give up the child, because she knew that the child would not have a good life if left alone in Marquis Muyang's mansion. No matter how much Muyang loved the child, there would be times when he did not take good care of the child. One negligence was enough to kill the child. Now that she had settled down, Yaoji had more time to think about it. It was not good for the child to follow Muyang, but it was not necessarily a good thing to have a mother like her. Moreover, it was not difficult for her to raise a child alone, but it was not so easy to make a good relationship with a child and let a boy grow up happily. Boys would always need a father. Moreover, Yaoji always had a hunch that the matter of Marquis Muyang's mansion was not over yet. Princess Ding did find a good family for the child, a couple over 40 without children. They came from a scholarly family. Although they were not rich, they had some assets. Yaoji secretly went to see them several times. The couple really treated the child as their own. Seeing her son growing up in a healthy and comfortable family, Yaoji smiled faintly. But in her heart, she was really happy and calm. 3 months later, Yaoji opened a restaurant in the city. The money to open the restaurant was borrowed from Princess Ding. In the end, Princess Ding only gave her half of the money, and the remaining half was the shares of Prince Ding Mansion. Yaoji had no objection to this, not to mention that she could not repay the kindness of Prince Ding Mansion in this life. She opened a restaurant in the territory of Prince Ding Mansion. What could be more stable than the Prince Ding Mansion itself? Yaoji had several years of experience in running Qingxing Lane. Although opening a restaurant was completely different from opening a musical house, at least it proved that Yaoji could handle the situation in dealing with people and receiving guests. As expected, it did not take long for the restaurant to gain a foothold in the city. Gradually, Yaoji did not need to show up in public and really retire behind the scenes. Yaoji did not know how she became familiar with Qin Feng. He only remembered that when the restaurant had just opened, Qin Feng often came back to support it. He didn't do anything. He just ordered a pot of wine and 2 side dishes. Sometimes, he would sit there for 2 to 4 hours. Because of his presence, even though she was an outsider who had just opened a new restaurant, many of the city's hedonistic sons and their peers did not dare to cause trouble in the restaurant. After all, everyone in Ruyang City knew that Qin Feng was Princess Ding's personal guard. After a long time, the two of them would naturally chat for a while and naturally became more familiar with each other. By the time Yaoji realized what was going on, Qin Feng threw the purple jade hairpin into her hand with a cold expression, pretending to be indifferent but not allowing her to refuse. She immediately panicked. Then, almost without hesitation, she asked Princess Ding to go to the capital to assist Lung Haoyu. After a long time, when she had calmed down, she suddenly realized that at that time, She actually felt that facing Qin Feng was even more difficult than facing Mu Yang again, and that she might even end up fighting with him. That was why she chose to escape to the capital. Princess Ding did not agree to her request at that time, and Qin Feng came to her door that night. Yaoji was not surprised by Qin Feng's arrival. With Qin Feng's status in the Prince Ding mansion and Princess Ding's trust in him, it was impossible for him not to know this kind of thing. If it's because of me that makes you embarrassed, then I could take it back. Looking at the woman in light purple in front of him, Qin Feng said in a deep voice. His calm eyes fell on the purple in Yaoji's hair bun. Yaoji was stunned and shook her head lightly. No, not all. She was not lying, at least in her heart at that moment. Yaoji was very clear that Prince Ding and Princess Ding were different. Princess Ding herself might not agree with her going to the capital, but Prince Ding must let her go. In the past few years, she had several contacts with Prince Ding. As a woman, she could only envy Prince Ding's feelings for the princess. But Prince Ding's means to those who had hurt Princess Ding or intended to hurt her were chilling. Yaoji also knew that when Princess Ding almost fell off the cliff and died, the person who led the army at that time was Marquis Muyang. Every time she saw Prince Ding's thoughtful look, Yaoji knew that Prince Ding did not forget this matter. Although Prince Ding did not say it himself, Yaoji had already understood what he meant. If she wanted to live peacefully and leisurely, she must deal with Marquis Muyang's mansion by herself. She could not deal with it more neatly than others, but she and her child could obviously make Marquis Muyang's mansion and Muyang suffer more. Yaoji was not a kind person. She did not feel unwilling or angry about this, just like she would not feel guilty or sad even if Marquis Muyang's mansion was destroyed because of her. This world was a survival of the fittest. When she was no match for young Madame Mu, she could only lie in the courtyard with her child and wait for Muyang to save her or wait for death. When Princess Ding did not have enough troops, she could only gamble with her life by jumping off the cliff. Therefore, when Marquis Muyang's mansion provoked Prince Ding and was unable to fight back, only destruction awaited them. She wanted to give her child a peaceful life. What did other people's lives have to do with her? Qin Feng was silent and did not persuade her anymore. He just said, "Come back alive. Don't forget, you have a child. I will wait for you." Seeing that Yaoji wanted to say something, Qin Feng calmly added, "I will wait for you to come back before making a decision." Yaoji shook her head and gritted her teeth. "I know you are very good to me. I don't know how many years I will be gone. You're not young anymore. You should have." Qin Feng looked out of the window and said lightly, "It's your business how to decide. It's my business whether to wait or not. The princess ordered me to escort you to the capital. You should rest early. We will leave tomorrow morning." After that, Qin Feng did not give Yaoji a chance to refuse. He turned and walked out of the door. Looking at the straight back of the person who had walked out of the door, Yaoji smiled bitterly in her heart. "Yaoji, you really should have just refused him directly." In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. Emperor Chu Mo Jingqi, who had spent his life trying to suppress the Prince Ding mansion, had passed away. The northern tribes and the northern territory invaded. The Dechu state, which had lost the Prince Ding mansion, was powerless to resist and went south to Jiangnan. The Prince Ding mansion protected the country, and the southern Chu regent, Mo Jingli, joined forces with the northern tribes and Shilling to deal with the Prince Ding mansion. And the Marquis Muyang's mansion was also finished. When she saw Muyang reluctantly close his eyes in front of her, Yaoji did not feel any joy or satisfaction from revenge. She did not even feel any sorrow. Her heart was only silent and desolate. The war was still going on. Yaoji returned to Glass City with a desolate state of mind and her adopted son, Qin Lai, who had accompanied her for several years. She still lived the same peaceful life as before. She only occasionally secretly went to see her son, who had already entered a private school. Only then did she feel a faint sense of comfort. Although she did not pay attention to worldly affairs, Yaoji still heard about the war on the front line from time to time. Every day, Yaoji sat at the table in the wing room that Qin Feng usually sat at in the restaurant. She listened to the people who walked by and talked loudly. Chapter 1134. Even though the Mahist army went through many twists and turns, they still defeated all the enemies in the end and returned victorious. Mother, Mother, let's go. Qinlai rushed in, grabbed Yaoji, and was about to rush out. Yaoji hurriedly pulled him back and said helplessly, "What's the rush?" Qinlai rolled his eyes and said, "Father is back. Let's go welcome him." Originally, Qinlai had always called her godmother and godmother, and Qinfeng godfather. But after returning to Glass City, Yaoji suddenly found that Qinlai, who was usually calm, had become much more lively, and the way he called her and Qinfeng had become father and mother, which would cause people to misunderstand. But he still didn't change. Yaoji pulled his hand away and sighed softly. Today is the day of the Mahist army's victorious return. There are so many people. Why should we go? Qinlai pouted unhappily and said, "What do you mean by joining in? What's wrong with going to welcome Father's victorious return? Father will be very happy when he sees us." Yaoji shook her head and said, "You go, I won't go. Just say congratulations to Qin. Commander for me." Qinlai's little face instantly drooped. It seemed that his mother still wasn't willing to accept his father. Qinlai felt that his godfather was the most devoted man in the world. Who in the world could chase a girl for 7 or 8 years? Why didn't his mother like him? Then he thought about the things that his mother often secretly took out to look at in the Chu capital in Jiangnan. It didn't seem like she didn't like them. Could it be that his mother had some concerns? "Since you're not going, I won't go either." Qinlai sat dejectedly at the table across from Yaoji, looking at her with eager eyes. Yaoji helplessly raised her hand and patted his head, saying, "What are you doing, you little brat? It's not like you don't know my identity. If I run out, won't I just embarrass Commander Qin? And you, if you dare to shout outside in the future, do you believe that I'll beat you?" "I don't believe," Qinlai said with a smile. "Godfather said that I might be his only son in his life. I still have to take care of him when he's old. Of course I have to call him father. And you, godmother, it feels so distant. Right, mother?" Yaoji felt powerless. She waved her hand and said, "Anyway, go and welcome your adoptive father. I'm not feeling well, so I won't be going." "Not feeling well?" Qinlai looked at her in confusion. "Yes, go quickly. I really can't go." Qinlai nodded seriously and said, "I understand. Mother, I'll be leaving first." Outside the door, Qinlai looked back at Yaoji, who was sitting at the table in a daze, and said to himself, "Does she mean that she wants father to visit her in person?" In the courtyard behind the restaurant, Yaoji was sitting alone under a tree, playing the zither. The sound of the zither, which was supposed to be beautiful and smooth, was intermittent and unclear. The mind of the person under the tree was obviously not on the strings of the zither. She was absent-minded as she plucked the strings. A series of steady footsteps came from the gate of the courtyard. Yaoji was stunned and looked back, only to see Qinfeng in black standing not far away and looking at her calmly. For some reason, Yaoji felt a little guilty. Qinfeng walked up and looked down at her. After a long time, he asked, "Why don't you come out of the city?" Yaoji stood up in a panic and said, I have to look after the restaurant." In fact, almost all the people in the city went out to welcome the returning Mahist army. Even though Yaoji's restaurant was one of the best in Glass City, there was no business this morning. "You're lying." Qinfeng stared at her and said indifferently. He was the leader of Qilin. If he couldn't even tell if someone was lying or not, he wouldn't be able to survive. Yaoji was a little upset. She clenched her teeth and said in a low voice, "Fine, I'll say. I don't think we're suitable. Let's meet less in the future. I'll give it back to you." Yaoji reached out to Qinfeng, holding the purple jade hairpin in her hand. Qinfeng didn't get angry. Even his expression didn't change in the slightest. He said indifferently, "It's too late." Yaoji was surprised. "What's too late?" Qinfeng said, "A few years ago, before you went to the capital, you didn't give it back to me. I'll take it as a yes." Miss Yaoji had always been good at dancing. Her dance in Qinxing Lane was enough to topple a city and stun the capital. Even in Jiangnan, she could still play with officials and noblewomen in southern Chu and the entire Marquis Muyang's mansion. But But in front of this silent and calm man, she couldn't even say a word clearly. After a while, she clenched her teeth and said, I said, it's impossible between us. What's your status and what's my status? If you really marry me, you'll only be laughed at by the world. Who dares to laugh at me? Qin Feng didn't care. There weren't many people in the world who dared to laugh at him. He was the leader of the most elite Qi Lin in the Prince Ding mansion and Princess Ding's most trusted confidant. Now that the world had just settled down, everyone knew that he must have a promising future. Gossip is a fearful thing. You should go. These years, if it's my fault. Yaoji lowered her head and said. She didn't know when she had placed this man in her heart. Perhaps it was when he silently accompanied her day after day in the restaurant back then. Perhaps it was when he calmly comforted her in Jiangnan. Perhaps it was when he didn't want to make things difficult for her and was willing to let her hate him to personally get rid of Muyang for him. Perhaps it was now. Even though she was moved by his feelings, she didn't want to hinder his future and make him a laughingstock. Qin Feng nodded and said, It's good that you know you're wrong. If you know you're wrong, you should change. Come with me. Qin Feng pulled Yaoji out of the courtyard. Yaoji's strength was naturally no match for Qin Feng's, even though Qin Feng didn't use too much strength. Where are we going? Prince Ding Mansion. I'm asking the prince and princess to grant a marriage. Qin Feng replied indifferently. In the Prince Ding Mansion, Yili calmly looked at the two people in front of her and asked, Have you thought it through? No. Yaoji said anxiously. She didn't expect that Qin Feng would really pull her to Princess Ding. Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Qin Feng, replying to Wang Fei, This subordinate has thought it through. Please grant my wish. People were distant from each other. Compared with Yaoji, Yili obviously cared more about Qin Feng's opinion. She just smiled and said, But I think Yaoji didn't agree. Qin Feng, do you know what the punishment is for forcing a woman from a good family? The heaviest punishment is 100 in banishment for 3,000 miles. Yili smiled and nodded with satisfaction. You're my confidant, so you don't have to be banished. But if a prince breaks the law, he'll be punished with 300 beatings. Are you lucky? Yes, please grant my wish, princess. Yili was immediately amused. She looked at Qin Feng with a smile and said, Do you think I'll marry Yaoji to you if you can endure 300 beatings? And Mo Xiaoyao, who had been watching the show, suddenly said, Li, if Qin Feng can really endure 300 beatings, it means he's not destined to die. You can give him face. Yaoji, don't worry. After all, you're the hero of the Prince Ding Mansion. I won't push you into the fire pit. After Qin Feng suffers 300 beatings, I promise he won't be able to get up for the rest of his life. In the future, you can do whatever you want, right? Yaoji couldn't come to her senses. She really didn't understand what was going on. Why did she suddenly have to beat Qin Feng? Seeing that Princess Ding was about to call someone to drag Qin Feng out for punishment, Yaoji hurriedly cried, No, no, princess, Qin Feng didn't force Yaoji. Yili raised her eyebrows. Oh, then who didn't you just say what? Yaoji was speechless. She looked at Prince Ding, who was in high spirits. It seemed that as long as she said one wrong word, he would immediately pull Qin Feng and beat him severely. Yaoji said carefully, I mean, you don't have to bother me with this kind of thing. Yili smiled faintly. What kind of trouble is this? You don't have a family, and Qin Feng is also alone. Naturally, your marriage will be arranged by the Prince Ding Mansion. Qin Feng, go back and tell director Mo, just arrange it according to the standard of a general. As the commander of Qi Lin, Qin Feng's position was equal to that of a general who led an army. In addition, Yaoji is the hero of the Prince Ding Mansion and the manager of the intelligence in the south. She has worked hard these years. Let's arrange the dowry according to the rank of a county princess. The wedding will be held in the Prince Ding Mansion in August this year. What do you think? Thank you, princess. Everything will be decided by you. Qin Feng agreed without hesitation. When she came out of the Prince Ding Mansion, Yaoji was still a little dizzy. She forgot to care that she and Qin Feng walking together in the daytime would cause gossip. Qin Feng looked at her with a smile and said, Now that the marriage has been decided, you should just stay at home and wait to get married. You? Yaoji's expression was complicated. She was not young anymore. Women over 30 years old no longer dreamed of wearing a red wedding dress and getting married like ordinary women. But the man in front of her gave her everything she dreamed of. From his eyes, she could see that he really didn't care about the possible rumors and ridicule. If there was a man in the world who could take care of her like this, why would she refuse the happiness that was about to come to her? You don't want to run away from the marriage, do you? Qin Feng frowned. No, I don't. I'll wait for you. Yaoji calmed herself down and said in a deep voice. Qin Feng's expression softened, and he said with a smile, Okay, I'll take you back first. Qin Feng, do you know my name? Of course I do. The tall man held the woman's slender hand, and while walking, he said with a faint smile, Isn't your surname Shin? Shin Yao. Yes, my name is Shin Yao. She was Shin Yao, no longer Yaoji. Qin Feng's Shin Yao. Chapter 1135. Beat him to death. Beat him to death. On a deserted street, a group of gorgeously dressed children were beating and kicking a thin and weak child in embroidered clothes. These children were the most cruel. They didn't understand the calculations and disputes of adults, but they used their own methods to directly and violently solve the problem. The child being beaten was also dressed in embroidered clothes, but his entire body was thin and weak, like a lonely puppy. His small face was already faintly discernible of his future handsome and extraordinary appearance. Perhaps it was this appearance that caused him to be hated and bullied by children of the same age. As expected of the son of a vixen, born with such a disgusting appearance, an 11 or 12-year-old youth in embroidered clothes stood to the side, proudly scolding. The boy fiercely opened his eyes, fiercely glaring at the elder brother who was standing to the side and ordering people to beat him. Startled by his ferocious gaze, the youth unconsciously took a step back. When he finally reacted, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. Teach him a good lesson for this young master. Someone's coming. It was unknown who shouted, but the children who were still beating and kicking immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The youth in embroidered clothes unwillingly glanced at the child on the ground, then followed after them. The street suddenly quieted down, and the beaten child curled himself into a small ball, tightly hugging his knees and softly sobbing. Don't cry, they're gone. A soft and gentle voice filled with kindness sounded, and the boy couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He raised his head and saw an extremely beautiful young girl in embroidered clothes standing in front of him at some unknown time. The young girl was only 12 or 13 years old, and even though he had seen many beautiful girls, the boy still felt that the elder sister in front of him was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She wore a light yellow robe with cloud patterns, and the sleeves and hem of her robe were embroidered with rose-red phoenix tail lace, and she also wore a light red phoenix tail embroidered scarf. A green gem hung by her slender neck, and her hair was casually tied up in a simple bun with a hibiscus hairpin, and there was also an unshaken hairpin. When she lowered her head to look at him, the light golden jade hanging from the buyao swayed gently, and the little child couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Seeing that he didn't speak, the young girl squatted down worriedly. No. The boy shook his head and whispered. Although those people beat him, they didn't really dare to beat him to death, so he didn't get hurt, but it was very painful. Otherwise, he would have been beaten to death over the years. It's good that you're not injured. I'll get someone to send you back. Who are those people? Why did they hit you? The girl looked at the boy's dusty face and took out a handkerchief to carefully wipe him clean. Only then did she realize that the boy was actually very good-looking. It's none of your business. The boy was stunned. He raised his hand and slapped the girl's hand away. Seeing the girl's startled expression, the boy bit his lips in annoyance. However, he stubbornly refused to speak and turned his head away. The girl was also a descendant of a prestigious family. Although she was young, she had seen many things. Looking at the child's appearance, he could roughly guess what was going on. This child was unwilling to go home. He was afraid that she had been wronged at home. Those people just now could be this child's family. All right, Let's not go home yet. What's your name? The girl pulled the boy up and asked with a smile. Feng. Feng Jiao. You? The boy hesitated, but in the end, he didn't ask. The girl's name couldn't be casually asked. Although Feng Jiao was a concubine's son, he had learned everything he needed to learn. Feng Jiao, you're a child of the capital's Feng family? You can just call me Big Sister Hua. The girl smiled. The noble ladies in the capital all had their own circles. When a large group of girls gathered together, they naturally couldn't help but gossip. The Feng family was considered a famous family in the capital. The girl naturally heard of the Feng family's affairs. You won't look down on me? Feng Jiao stared at the girl in front of him and asked in confusion. The girl smiled sweetly and said in confusion, Look down on you? Why? You're so young, only 7 or 8 years old. Why would I look down on you? I'm a concubine's son. Feng Jiao clenched his teeth. After hesitating, he fiercely added, I'm not young. I'm already 9 years old. 9 years old? You don't look like it. The girl said, whether you're a concubine's son or not isn't something you can choose. In the future, if you work hard, others won't look down on you. However, if you grow up and learn from those hedonistic sons of rich parents, I will naturally look down on you. I'll be 9 years old soon. Feng Jiao said, Don't tell me I don't want to learn well. It was clearly Annie who said a concubine's son didn't need to learn so much. The girl smiled as she looked at the indignant child in front of her. Suddenly, she pursed her lips and smiled. If you really want to improve yourself, I'll take you to a good place to play. Feng Jiao looked suspiciously at the girl in front of him. The girl comforted him by patting his head and smiling. Don't be afraid. Big Sister isn't a bad person. When the soft jade hand touched his dusty head, Feng Jiao felt in his heart that even if this sister was a bad person, he was willing to go with her. It was better than going home to face his Annie and 2 older brothers. Aya, miss, you're holding Feng Jiao's hand, they walked to the intersection. There was a carriage parked at the intersection. In front of the carriage stood several bodyguard-like men, a middle-aged woman, and several servant girls. Seeing the 2 of them, the middle-aged woman hurriedly greeted them with a frown and a hint of anger. She had just seen a group of children ganging up on a child. Originally, they had planned to scare them away. Who would have thought that the miss would insist on taking a look at the boy and even bring him back? Looking at the dirty boy in front of her, the middle-aged woman's brows immediately furrowed. Wet nurse, the girl called out in a low voice. Patting Feng Jiao's hand comfortingly, she smiled at the wet nurse and said, This child is very obedient. Take him to be a companion for Ayao. I am my miss. The wet nurse immediately cried out, Miss, we don't even know where this boy came from. How can he be a companion for that young master? If something happens, their Hua family was considered to be of noble status in the capital, but compared to the Prince Ding mansion, it was nothing. Not just anyone had the qualifications to be a playmate for the young master of the Prince Ding mansion. It's fine. Jiao is a good child. The girl smiled and said, Get in the carriage. This has the same name as the second young master. The wet nurse was stunned and carefully sized up Feng Jiao. Only then did she realize that this child was very good-looking. It was just that he was a bit thin. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't lose to the second young master of the Prince Ding mansion. Fine, but this child has to be obedient. Don't anger the nobles and implicate our miss. The wet nurse nodded and instructed. She wasn't a cold-hearted person. This child was so young and was being ganged up on by a group of children. It was quite pitiful. However, as the eldest Mrs. Wet Nurse, she naturally had to pay attention to everything. Chapter 1136. On this day, for the first time, Feng Jiao met a person who would have a great impact on his future life. It was the second son of King Ding's mansion, Immerse Xiuyao. As the illegitimate son of a merchant family, to be able to meet the legitimate son of the high and mighty Prince Ding of Great Chu, it could be said to be a matter of 3 lifetimes of fortune. But for Feng Jiao, what he thought at that time was he really wanted to kick him to death. As soon as he entered the magnificent gate of King Ding's mansion, a strong wind came to his face. Feng Jiao was stunned. After all, he was only a child less than 9 years old. Even if he found the hidden weapon, he couldn't avoid it. However, he didn't think that the hidden weapon flying toward his face was just an illusion. A stone flew past his scalp, but he only felt something flying over his head. There wasn't even a trace of pain. Sister Yunqi, why are you here? On a rockery in front, an 8 or 9-year-old boy in white sat on it swaggeringly. He looked at the well-dressed girl with a smile and didn't even look at Feng Jiao. But Feng Jiao didn't care. He just noticed one thing. So, her name was Yunqi? Why Yunqi? Yao, are you being naughty again? I'll complain to first young master and let him punish you. Hua Yunqi laughed crisply. The child on the rockery somersaulted in the air and landed steadily in front of them. A child less than 10 years old, but his lightness skill was not inferior to the first-class masters in Jianghu. Mo Xiaoyao curled his lips and said, Sister Hua, you always use my elder brother to suppress me. But second young master Mo was not afraid of anything, but he obeyed his elder brother, who raised him since he was a child. Hua Yunqi covered her mouth and snickered. Who asked him to be afraid of Prince Ding and the heir? Sister Hua, are you here for me? Mo Xiaoyao said with a smile. Hua Yunqi nodded and said with a smile, Yes, I'm going out of the city to pray for blessings and visit Great Elder Princess. Last time, Great Elder Princess nagged me to take you there next time. Pack up and let's go. Mo Xiaoyao let out an anguished cry as he stared at Hua Yunqi. Hua Yunqi raised an eyebrow and smiled, ignoring his pitiful appearance. Mo Xiaoyao could only grumble in his heart. Every time Great Elder Princess saw him, she liked to pinch and rub him. This young master isn't a doe. Only then did second young master Mo's gaze fall upon the gloomy Feng Jiao standing to the side. He asked, Who is this brat? He's so silly. Hua Yunqi glared at him helplessly, then said, His name is Feng Jiao. He's a good kid. I'll tell the crown prince to let him learn martial arts with you in the future. You're about the same age, so you'll have companion. Second young master Mo rolled his eyes. He looks so silly. Can he keep up with his studies? Hearing someone's arrogant tone, Feng Jiao silently lowered his head and stared at his fist. Even when he was bullied by his 2 half-brothers every day these years, he didn't feel that his fist was so strong. Hey, silly boy, you don't want to beat me, do you? Even 10 of you can't beat one of me, do you know? Second young master, Mo, couldn't be the most arrogant, so he would only be more arrogant. Mo Xiaoyao, Hua Yunqi shouted angrily. Seeing Hua Yunqi's raised hand, second young master Mo immediately fled and didn't forget to complain, Sister Hua, I'm your younger brother. Who on earth is this brat? Why are you so nice to him? Feng Jiao snorted coldly, raised his small face, and turned to go out. Hua Yunqi was stunned, hurriedly pulled him and said, Where are you going? Feng Jiao said coldly, You don't need to beg him. I don't want to learn martial arts with him. Isn't he just the second young master of the Prince Ding mansion? I don't want to. Hua Yunqi was both angry and amused. She grabbed the child who was about to leave with one hand and glared at Mo Xiaoyao, who was making a face at the side. She laughed and said, A Yao just likes to mess around. He doesn't have any bad intentions. Feng Jiao snorted disdainfully. They had just met, and he was already hitting people with stones, and his eyes were growing on top of his head. How could he be a good person? I'm going back. Thank you for saving me today. Feng Jiao tried his best to express his thanks like an adult, but his current sorry state was really lacking in persuasion. Seeing that he was about to leave, Mo Xiaoyao didn't want to. He blocked his path with a smile and asked, What are you going back for? To continue getting beaten? Although he was young, he was extremely intelligent. How could he not know why Feng Jiao was in such a mess? And why did Hua Yunqi bring him to the Prince Ding mansion? Who cares what you do? Feng Jiao's face immediately turned red with anger, as if his embarrassment had been seen through. Mo Xiaoyao raised his hand and pulled on his cheek. All right, for Sister Hua's sake. In the future, you can practice martial arts with this young master. Who wants to practice with you? Seeing that Feng Jiao was about to refuse, Mo Xiaoyao quickly moved in front of him and said in a low voice, "This young master guarantees that you'll only need 3 days to beat those people who bullied you to the ground." Feng Jiao was silent. It wasn't that he had a good impression of this annoying person in front of him, but that beating those people who bullied him to the ground was really a very tempting suggestion. "What are your conditions?" Feng Jiao asked. In this world, there was no such thing as a free lunch. Perhaps except for her? Conditions? Mo Xiaoyao didn't seem to expect that he would say such a thing. After thinking for a while, he touched his chin and pretended to be mature. "From now on, if I tell you to go east, you can't go west. If I tell you to jump into rivers, you can't climb mountains. If I tell you to chase cats, you can't play with dogs. In short, you'll listen to everything I say." Mo Xiaoyao, go to hell. Young Master Feng San spat out coldly. Listen to everything he said? If he told him to die, he would do it. Did he think he was a fool? "I hate gigolos like you the most. Since you came, Sister Hua doesn't love me anymore." Second young Master Mo was a little hurt. Feng Jiao rolled his eyes. "Do you think you're so evil?" "Xiaoyao, get along well with Jiao. I won't visit Great Elder Princess today," Hua Yunqi said with a smile. Mo Xiaoyao's little face lit up. He raised his hand and patted Feng Jiao's shoulder with a smile. "The person Sister Hua brings is my good friend and brother. Sister Hua, don't worry. We'll get along well. I'll take good care of Brother Jiao. He's the same age as you." Hua Yunqi emphasized helplessly. "I don't care. Feng Jiao, right? Come, this young master will take you to the study for class. The teacher will definitely go crazy." Mo Xiaoyao waved his hand at Hua Yunqi, then grabbed Feng Jiao's collar and ran off. Being dragged along, Feng Jiao looked back absent-mindedly and saw the beautiful girl still standing behind him and looking at them with a smile. The faint sunlight shone on her, as if she had a halo of 7 colors. Bang! Feng Jiao, who was absent-minded, tripped and fell to the ground, prostrating himself on the ground. Feng Jiao's eyebrows twitched. Mo Xiaoyao, damn you. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.